Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. Thanks for joining us today. Today is January 31st, 2016, and I'm really excited about today's show. We got a lot of stuff on the agenda. Today, first of all, the show is titled Good and Evil, The Never-Ending Battle. This is episode 105 of our program, On the Move with Mack Worley. I, of course, am your host, Mack Worley III. And today's featured topics, we got a lot of stuff we're going to cover. First of all, I want to talk about how I believe that evil can never be destroyed. The only thing that we can do is to protect ourselves from it. I'm going to make some correlations into political philosophy, especially in the left or the statist mindset of how the government can protect you from all of the evils in the world. And I'm going to talk about why that doesn't necessarily jive with the real world. Then I also want to talk about why non-interventionism is a pragmatic approach to foreign affairs. We're going to talk about oil, free trade, foreign entanglements, and immigration. Then I have some clips for you guys. I think you're going to appreciate this. This is Ted Cruz on ethanol subsidies from the last debate. He's talking about free markets. And I have some other clips from him talking about sanctuary cities and Obamacare. In the second hour of our program, we're going to have Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. He's going to join us to talk about Oregon gun control. We got some clips from something that he has posted on his YouTube channel. That's Daylight Disinfectant on YouTube.com. So check him out on there. Subscribe to his stuff. Excellent stuff on his YouTube channel. He's also going to talk about Planned Parenthood, some of the news that's been coming out. There has been recent indictments during the Planned Parenthood investigation. However, it's not what you would think it would be. Nobody from Planned Parenthood has been indicted. The journalists who were investigating Planned Parenthood are being indicted. So we're going to talk about that. Additionally, Dan and I, we're going to talk about Portland being named the most atheist city in America. And Dan lives in Portland, so I'd like to get his perspective on that. Also, I want to look at the constitutional power of the presidential pardon. We've had some excellent conversations in our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. We've been talking about this, and I feel like I really, first of all, I had a great time talking with you guys in this conversation about this power. This is a constitutional power. It is in the Constitution, and I asked and I put out a poll. Do you guys think that the president should have the power to pardon? So I'll give you the results. I also want to talk about some of the points that were made in there and my thoughts on this power of presidential pardoning. Now, this one is particularly disturbing for me. I was having a conversation with somebody via YouTube. For those of you who don't know, I was unlawfully arrested for open carrying a firearm in Vancouver, Washington in 2013. And I've posted a video on YouTube about that. My trial is on there. If you have any questions about what I'm talking about, if you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free. Go to youtube.com/OnTheMoveShow. All of the information's out there. I recorded the whole thing, got the trial on there. I'm working on getting the entire trial posted and all of that. But I had a conversation with a statist who was having conversations with me about how basically there needs to be checks and balances on individual liberty. and I want to talk about this brainwashing that's going on and give you my take on this conversation. So anyway, we also have some other featured topics. There's an article I want to read about bad January results in the stock market, how it could be a bad omen for 2016. The FBI ambush and shooting of LaVoy Finicum, I believe is how you pronounce that. Then I also want to talk about Iran. Iran is now giving medals for the capture of U.S. sailors. You may have heard this on the news a while back ago. There was a United States vessel that had broken down and drifted into Iranian waters, apparently. And Iran, rather than giving aid to the American sailors, they captured them. And, this is all on the heels of our Iranian deal that's supposed to bring us better relations with Iran, which obviously isn't helping because, Iran is immediately going into Syria after this and violating UN resolutions about their missile testing and whatnot. So, obviously, we're not having any kind of better relations with that. But I want to give you some perspective on this article. And if we have time, I want to cover this. I think it's really important because, first of all, I wasn't able to get to this last week. I want to compare and contrast the environment, the society, the times during the impeachment of President Andrew Johnson. I think it's pretty important. Because, first of all, history is one of the things I'm very passionate about. And I can see some similarities. I've been studying the impeachment of President Andrew Johnson. I can see some similarities between that time and this time. And I want to bring those to light. So I got a whole bunch of other articles. I mean, there's no way. I've got 6 hours of show here, and I got to fit it in 3 hours. Not going to get to it all. I already know that. So anyway, please feel free to check us out on our website, onthemoveshow.com. You can follow us on Spreaker.com/onthemoveshow. That would be really helpful. If you would go to Spreaker.com, that's SPREAKER.com/onthemoveshow, click the follow button. You are helping our program. You're helping spread the message of liberty. You're doing a lot for us. It may seem like a little thing to you, but it's a huge deal to me because, first of all, you're doing me a personal favor. But second of all, analytically speaking, you're helping people find the show. When we have more people that follow us, that means that we show up in search results better. So, we instead of being 10 pages back, maybe we're 5 pages back. So it's extremely helpful because when more people can find us, more people can listen to us, and you're in fact helping your fellow man get this information out there, and we certainly appreciate it. Additionally, you can follow us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow, and please subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow as well. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to move right into our first featured topic. Evil can never be destroyed. We can only protect ourselves from it. You guys don't want to miss this. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. With the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hey, Mac Pack. First of all, I just want to give you guys a heads up. If you would like to join today's conversation, like I said, we've got a lot of stuff on the menu, a lot of stuff for you guys to digest, but anything that you would like to talk about, if something's on your mind, stuck in your craw, please give us a call. That rhymed. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. If you are shy and you don't want to be on the air, completely understand. I know where you're coming from. Please go ahead and, if you have something, a point that you would like me to say on the show, I'll read your tweets on the air. That's at OnTheMoveShow, so feel free to get us on there. Or you can message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it here. Evil can never be destroyed. We can only protect ourselves from it. And by saying we can only protect ourselves from it, I mean that we, as individuals, this is an individual thing. You can't relinquish your individual defense to some other party without there being some kind of bad consequences, because, again, you can't destroy evil. All right, this is so incredibly important. It will continue to pop up and continue to pop up. And this is one of the things that statists, they really don't understand, or they just want to deny. They want to pretend that you can just fix the world. You can create a utopian society, and there will be no crime, there will be no poverty, there will be no ills of society. There's never going to be a criminal underbelly in their mind. All right? And in addition, evil extends further to just small-time criminal acts, petty theft or burglary, or even, attacks, murders, things along those lines. It extends further. Evil is in ideologies as well. We've seen this throughout history where, entire countries fall prey to this. I was reading a book. It's The Charisma of Hitler, I think. Hitler's Charisma, how Hitler marched the Germans into the abyss. And first of all, I don't want to disparage anyone of German descent. I'm not disparaging the nation of Germany. I'm not doing that. And I have noticed that Germans typically, from my experience here, they get very offended anytime you talk about Nazi Germany. Anytime you make a reference to Nazi Germany. I was arrested, and in my arrest video, I said, I thought I was in America. I didn't realize I was in Nazi Germany. I didn't realize that I had to give you my papers, even though you admit that I'm suspected of no crime. I didn't realize that you could just detain me, even though you have no probable cause or reasonable suspicion. And I made the reference of Nazi Germany. So to be clear for any Germans out there in the audience, I'm not saying that Germany now has Nazis, or it very well could. I don't live in Germany, but I did hear that Mein Kampf is on the rise as far as books that are being read and purchased nowadays. So that's something to note. But I'm not commenting on Germany now. There was a historical period of time where the Nazis were in control of Germany, and I think we can all argue. I think it could be argued that was probably not a very great time for individual rights or liberty. So. It's nothing against Germans. It's nothing against the country of Germany. It's against the ideology that surrounded Nazi Germany, where the state was essentially the religion. Your leaders are your God. You pray at the altar of the state. That is what I have a problem with. And we have already discovered through the prism of history that was an evil regime, an evil ideology, where they believed that certain people were inferior, and because of that, they could put them into concentration camps and wipe them out. They scapegoated a certain population, and of course, I'm talking about the Jewish population, for all of the ills in their society, and they believed that they were a superior race. That superiority is the evil I'm speaking about. That was one iteration. And one thing that I just want to point out, we'll continue into this in a second. I just kind of want to deviate here, go off into the weeds just a bit. I spent this morning, I was watching Hunting Hitler. I don't know if any of you have seen this show on the History Channel. Fascinating stuff. I'm sure all of you are aware of the common historical adage that Hitler killed himself in the bunker when he knew he was losing the war, that he committed suicide. And this is what we've all been told. This is the history that we have been told. This very well could be true, but the History Channel is putting out some pretty stark evidence saying that it's very, very possible that Hitler was never killed himself after World War II, that he escaped to Spain, took a U-boat from Spain, went to Argentina, then started trying to actually hide and go to different places in South America. He ended up going north into Brazil, into this one small place called Casino. And there's evidence that potentially Hitler never died in Germany, and he was plotting and planning to basically attack America using nuclear weapons that he took the plans from Germany with him, these rockets and nuclear weapon technology documents, and he was trying to basically start the Fourth Reich. I mean, look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy factist. I just think that this is interesting, and there is evidence proving that this is a potential. There's more evidence stacked up in the favor that Hitler never died during World War II than there is showing that he did. And you have to ask, because the evidence that we have is basically dental records and whatnot that were supposedly provided from the Russians at that point. There's a lot of reasons why a government who's involved in a war against a nation would want that nation to believe that their leader is dead. And there's also reasons why, Hitler himself would want everyone to believe that he's dead. So it's interesting. But it just goes to show you that evil can't actually be destroyed. It just keeps popping up. He regrouped and tried to come up with another plan, if that is in fact what happened. And I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it could be. There's evidence now that's showing this kind of stuff may have happened, and they've been able to trace the steps. Very interesting show, Hunting Hitler. If you guys haven't checked it out, I wouldn't call myself a fan of Hitler, but I'm very interested in the history behind Hitler, and also how he managed to convince so many people to buy on to what is so clearly evil. There's a common saying that is said that evil only prevails when good men do nothing. And I could not agree with that more. The fact is that there is evil in the world all over the place. And when we don't stand up to it, whether or not it's a foreign government, whether or not it's an ideology, whether or not it's an individual, whether or not it's our own government, evil will prevail if good men or women do nothing about it. If we are afraid to speak out, if we're afraid to cause a stir, if we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want to be seen as being crazy, we don't want to be called conspiracy theorists. I get it. No, but nobody wants to be, made fun of. Nobody wants their opinion to seem irrelevant. And I understand. And you don't want to be called stupid or made to feel stupid. I understand. But when we are staring evil in the face, and let's look at modern society now, today in the modern world, ISIS. Clearly, the ideology is evil. And it just goes to show you that evil can't be destroyed. It just pops up in one form or another. And in this case, it's different. It's not the Aryan nation society that Hitler dreamed up, where Germans with blonde hair and blue eyes, that was the superior race of people. No. In this case now, it's the literal interpretation of these religious documents that ISIS believes in. They believe that the Quran is the revealed word of God. And because they believe that, they believe in Sharia law. Sharia law says that you can basically subjugate half of the population. We're talking about women, treat them like cattle, or worse. Hell, I mean, cattle, even in America, cattle is treated much better than we treat some of the women in Sharia law. It's unbelievable. We have PETA that are calling for animal rights. There's nobody calling for animal rights there's nobody calling for women's rights who believes in Sharia as the revealed word of God. I'm sorry. If you believe that it's okay to murder a woman, that you can rape a woman because she's an inferior person, you can treat a woman, with disrespect, you can beat a woman, you can beat infidels, rape them, murder them, enslave them. If you believe that you can do that's evil. I'm sorry. It's just evil. So right now, that is an ideology. And evil props up in all these different ways. And historically speaking, governments are usually how evil has been used. So let's relate this here, the concept of protecting yourself from evil. What can you do to protect yourself from evil? In my opinion, the best way to protect yourself is obviously to know your philosophy as far as ideology. Where do you stand as far as political ideology, government power, control? Because if we win the battle in the mind, I think that is honestly where the battle is being fought now, and I think it's where we stand the best chance of winning. So what I mean by that is, if everybody actually understands the basic principles, and these so basic that you can ask anybody, even your statist friends, you can ask them these things, and more than likely, because we've all been taught this, they're going to agree. Do you agree that government gains its power from the consent of the people? This is within the Declaration of Independence. This is one of the founding documents of this country. Do you believe that government gets its power, is granted its power from the consent of the people? Most people will say yes. So, therefore, if you believe that, we can go further. We can take that. We can use that as a stepping stone and get them to understand, the statist friends that you have, or statists in general, that government taking power or taking rights away from people, it's a violation, first of all, of your individual rights, but they use it as the collective good. They want to say that, we're doing better for society because we're protecting people. And my argument is that you can protect yourself, your family. The government was intended to protect your individual rights. It's supposed to protect your life, liberty, and property. That's why we created the United States government. That was the purpose. It says so in our founding documents. So if you believe that the government was created and granted the power it has through the consent of the people, and that its purpose was to protect life, liberty, and property, it's not talking about collective rights. These are individual rights. So you can't use a collective to take away the rights of an individual, because collective rights are built upon individual rights. That's what collectives are. That's all the power of a group. That's all it is built on, is individuals coming together, asserting their individual rights. That's it. So collectives don't have more rights. And how we protect ourselves from evil is, first of all, we control the power, and we make sure that it stays at the lowest level possible. And that power is individuals. We make sure that power doesn't centralize. We make sure that we prevent the power from getting into the hands of the government. Because, first of all, ideologies are one thing. And ideologies, in some form or another, they can pop up. They can be good. They can be evil. Just like anything else. Just like, I've mentioned before with guns. Guns are a tool. They can be used for good things. They can be used for bad things. But again, it depends on the person using the tool. And ideology is the same thing. An ideology can be used for negative things or positive things. I'm up here trying to talk about individual rights, freedom, liberty. These are the things that I'm trying to do with my ideology. I'm trying to use it for good. And ISIS, on the other hand, they have a different ideology. They're using it for evil. So ideology in itself is a tool. But a big threat that we have is from governments. Ideology is one thing, but if there's no power structure there and people refuse to be governed or controlled from external sources, if people refuse to let other people dictate how they're going to live their life, or let other people steal from them, let other people, hurt them, and they think that somebody has authority to do that, if somebody has an authority to use force against another person, then that's a problem. And you can't protect yourself from that if you're capitulating and you're giving up your rights to this higher authority. Again, the highest authority that you have is your individual liberty, and some people would say that that's granted from natural law. Some people would say that's granted from God himself. So, or herself, I guess, depending on what you prescribe to. But in terms of the statists out there, those who think that the government can protect you and do everything for you, I think it's a very problematic idea. All right, they want to create a world where the government takes care of you, that it provides everything for you. The government has all of the guns. There's supposed to be no crime because of that, even though there's no statistics that back up that if you ban guns or you have very restrictive gun legislation, gun control, that violent crime actually goes down. They may be able to show that gun crime goes down, but that doesn't mean that violent crime will go down. It may just go towards another weapon, because again, people are going to find another way. If somebody wants to hurt somebody, they're going to find a way to do it. They may just go after a gun because it's an easier way to do it. So anyway, as far as protecting ourselves from evil, we have to make sure that our government doesn't turn evil. Our government doesn't turn the key of tyranny, and suddenly start acting against ourselves, because then we can't protect ourselves. If we have an authoritarian regime, like many would argue we have today, honestly, I mean, today it seems like we're slipping further and further towards this centralization of power, big government. And I really do believe that we are at a crossroads here, especially with this election. And I've covered before, I've talked about what I think the difference would be between, Ted Cruz or perhaps a Bernie Sanders or Hillary, a leftist presidential candidate. I don't think that they're going to save us from the crash that's coming. I've been talking about this the last few episodes, and we're going to get to that a little bit later in the show. But I don't think that this race is going to change the pain that we're going to have to go through. There's going to be pain, but it's going to. We're having a fight right now for the hearts and minds of this country, and we're going to decide between going further towards authoritarianism. Excuse me, I couldn't say that word. Or we're going to go back to first principles. We're going to go back to individual liberty. Are we going to actually try a free market society? Are we going to try an actually free society? Because one thing that Statists will say is that they like to talk about monopolies. That's one of their biggest things of why we need government, because we have to control these evil corporations. In my opinion, I'm not necessarily sold on the idea that monopolies are a bad thing. I don't necessarily know if we absolutely need the government to prevent monopolies. This is something I'm continuing to educate myself on. But as far as I can tell, it seems like the only monopolies that really I'm concerned about or I have seen problems with are the monopolies that are created when the government intervenes and uses that power that we were talking about to pick winners and losers, to create problems for competition in the market and make it so one company or one group of companies gets special favors, preferential treatment, tax havens, something along those lines. And in fact, I want to read an article here. I picked up some information, and I thought this was kind of crazy. Facebook. Many of you are aware of Facebook. It's out there. A lot of you are probably on it. Again, I'm on it, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. But Facebook, it's a huge, huge corporation. They made, this is an article here on the dailymail.co.uk. They made $2.4 billion in profits. This is in euros, so I don't know how many dollars that is. It's probably more dollars than, less dollars than in euros, I think. I don't know. Anyway, but they only paid 86 million euros in corporate taxes. And this is in the United Kingdom, of course. They only are paying 4% corporate tax around the world, according to the figures that are revealed amid a storm over Google's sweetheart deal. So I just think this is interesting to point out. One of the things, and you're going to hear this from Bernie Sanders supporters, they talk about going after the 1% and how we need to increase taxes to do this. This whole philosophy of taxing the wealthy to give to the poor, it actually doesn't help society. It doesn't help the poor at all, because all it does is the programs that they're trying to create that are going to help the poor, bring the poor up to the middle class, all it does is it makes it so that they have to spread the tax out to the middle class itself. Essentially, they kick out the ladder of success. They make it so people in the middle class are taxed in order to pay for these programs that we're only supposed to tax the richest 1%. And first of all, that's because the richest 1% could pay 100% of their wealth, and it's not going to be enough to cover these programs that they want, like free college, free health care, everything that's free, somebody's paying for it. So the rich, even if you did tax 100% of their wealth, even if you managed to steal all of the wealth, and also you have to mention steal all of their incentive to create wealth at that point, it's not enough. The numbers just aren't there. So it has to go to the middle class. They have to tax more than just the wealthy 1%. They have to start taxing the middle class. And what they're doing is they're preventing the middle class from ever making it to the wealthy 1%. They're kicking out the ladder of success. And this doesn't even hurt the wealthy 1%, because the wealthy 1% gets tax exemptions. They get all these sweetheart deals. They get all the corporate cronyism that goes along with colluding with the government, and they don't actually end up paying the taxes that these leftists want, because, again, this is a byproduct of socialism. It creates collusion with big business and big government. That's what happens. When there is power, people try to manipulate it. The answer here is not to create more power and tax more and more bureaucracy. No, the answer is to deregulate the power, because then everybody has a fair playing field. It's based on merit, what you do, your action, and actually also some luck. Luck plays a big part of that as well. But the wealthy aren't hurt by big wealth taxes. They'll find a way. Again, the tax code is 71,000 pages. It's meant to be so complicated as to create such a burden on the middle class, but give all of these loopholes for the rich and wealthy to get out of. And I'm not for taxing away all of their wealth anyway, but I think that a flat tax is a great idea. How can you have a problem with taxing somebody the same percentage as someone else? How is that not fair? Anyway, we got to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to enter into our next featured topic. Let's see. That is going to be, we're going to move right into non-interventionism and how I believe it's a pragmatic approach to foreign affairs. I'm going to talk about oil, free trade, foreign entanglements, and immigration. You guys don't want to miss this next segment. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hey gang, we're back. If you want to join today's conversation, you have something on your mind, give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. All right, so let's move right into the next topic here. I want to talk about the whole idea of non-interventionism. You know, some people call this isolationism. I would disagree. Non-interventionism basically just means that you're not intervening. You're not going into places and getting into other people's governmental functions, their politics. You're not trying to impose your will on anyone. How can you argue with that? How can that not be a good thing? Why is that considered isolationist? It doesn't make sense to me, but I think it's a pragmatic approach. And let me talk to you about why. First of all, the left, one of the things that they like to say is that, you know, everyone hates America because we're trying to be the world's police. And, you know, I can't really disagree with the world police part. Now, again, I would also comment that there is a rise of anti-American sentiment around the world, especially Europe, and I heard also in Australia. I heard that's a growing trend, but I don't necessarily know if it's because of interventionism, of what we're doing around the world. What we're doing around the world has a lot to do with it. I think some people could argue that that there are reasons for us to be in Syria if you're talking about protecting life of people. But again, it's not our situation to get involved in. We are not the world's police. We're not also the world's soup kitchen either. There is evil in the world, as I've mentioned, and it's very pragmatic to take steps to protect yourself from it. Basically, when you're looking at the world, you either have to completely control and dominate the world and take out all of your enemies. Anybody who poses a threat to you, you have to have a huge military to impose your will upon all these people, or you can just take steps to take out direct threats and protect your own country. That's what I think is the pragmatic way to deal with foreign affairs, world politics. I'm not a fan of us being in the Middle East. This is not because I sympathize with any particular group or anything along those lines. My belief is that the Middle East for us is a quagmire, and it honestly, if we're talking about what the terrorists want, you always hear people say, "Well, that's what the terrorists want," and I get it. I get what a lot of people say. Some of the arguments have merit. Like, for example, after 9/11, we restricted our liberty. If the terrorists want to come after us, and they want to bring fear into our hearts, if they want to terrorize us and they want to change our society, what better way than to have us restrict our own liberty? Just look at what happened after the San Bernardino shooting. Terrorist attack is here at the homeland, and Obama talks about taking away our guns. Like, that's the problem. We had people come in. The wife came from Saudi Arabia, all right? She came here. She was vetted. She was checked. And she passed. She passed the check. So that just says that the check is not really up to snuff. Doesn't pass the smell test. But more importantly, that was an external threat from an external ideology. And yeah, the husband, he lived here. I believe he was an American citizen, if I'm remembering correctly. But still, this is a foreign ideology. So we have to take steps to protect ourselves. And actually, there's a lot of common sense stuff to it. Like, first of all, respecting individual liberty, allowing people, and not even just allowing, because the government doesn't give you the right to bear arms. The government is actually prohibited from infringing upon this right, but we've slipped down that slippery slope and they infringe on it like crazy. But I digress. As far as protecting ourselves, there's a lot of common sense things we can do. Let people arm themselves, not take away guns, not remove the method for them to best protect themselves. But we don't make any sense with that. As far as immigration, we're bringing in immigrants from other countries, all right, for refugee purposes, and these other countries are areas that are dominated by this ideology that believes in Sharia law. Now, I'm not saying that we should not allow any Muslims in the country. All I'm saying is that we should be very, very selective, just in general, with who we allow into the country. It's our country. I feel like we've been brainwashed, especially, I think it's accelerated in the past 10 years or so. We've been getting brainwashed to hate ourselves, to hate our country, to hate America, to hate the values that we stand for, just to hate everything about our country. We're not good enough. We're evil capitalists. Oh yeah, we're supposed to be what's wrong with the world. That's what we're being brainwashed to believe. Look, I think we have one hell of a country, and I think we have a lot of things here worth protecting. Most importantly, the people of this country. And I understand that immigration is a great tool. It can make your country stronger, but it's a stopgap. It fills gaps. That's what that's how you use it the most effectively. If you have like these H-1B visas or whatever they're called, that are supposed to bring in skilled workers to fill in areas that we don't have enough Americans to fill. I don't have any problem with that idea. But the way the idea is being used, for example, I just heard a story the other day. Disney's bringing in a bunch of immigrants with these visas to replace their workers. These are American citizens. They're being laid off, and in many cases, they're being forced to train their replacements as a prerequisite to get their severance pay. First of all, these visas, they're not supposed to be used. I believe it's actually against the law for them to use them to replace American workers for cheaper foreign laborers. What's going on, Disney? What the hell's going on? So, using immigration as a tool is great. I believe it can make us stronger. I believe that diversity is an excellent thing. I have nothing wrong or against Muslims in general. I have a problem with Sharia law. That's my issue. If you believe that it's okay to rape a woman, you believe it's okay to enslave people, basically, if you believe it's okay to hurt other people, or that some groups of people are superior to others, I got a problem with your ideology. Whether or not it's Islam or whether or not it's Nazism, whatever, I got a problem with that. That's where I stand. But as far as immigration, we can use this tool to fill in gaps, but it's not supposed to hurt Americans that are actually in those jobs. We're not supposed to just be bringing in refugees because we think, we're a rich nation, we're a soup kitchen, we can help these people. Look, we have to take steps to protect ourselves because evil exists. It exists in the world, and there are just some people that want to hurt us. And though I don't necessarily trust my government, I think that they've been doing shady things, and that's why I don't want us to be involved in Syria. I think our government wants us to get involved in Syria. I think they want some kind of an event, either a big terror attack here in our country to cover up the economic collapse, or they want a World War III to kick off with conflicts with us and Russia. I think that Syria is not our problem. And I know a lot of people, as far as oil, we were talking about non-interventionism. A lot of people don't want us to leave the Middle East because, we got to lock on that oil. And if we leave, then Russia will move in there to create stability in the region, which is what they're doing in Syria. And by the way, they've been bombing the hell out of Syria. I read a story that the Turkmen, it's basically the rebels, the Turkish rebels that are in Syria fighting. They've been bombed so much by Russia. And as you guys know, there's a lot of tension between Russia and Turkey. The Turkish rebels had to move back into Turkey because Russia's just bombing like crazy, and Russia doesn't care. The casualties for civilians have been going through the roof. Apparently, Russia does not care. They don't have the military conscience that we supposedly have. But as far as what our government is planning to do, they're doing all sorts of stuff in the Middle East to control this oil, this petrodollar. They want to lock it down. I honestly, I'm starting to think that the Iran nuclear deal was about the U.S. petrodollar because they know that Iran's going to start selling oil again. They want to make sure that Iran only trades in U.S. dollars. I think that they're trying to stave off the collapse as long as possible. If they can make the U.S. dollar, look strong, because people have to keep buying U.S. dollars in order to buy oil, that's going to make U.S. dollars look good. I just think it's not going to happen. I don't think we can hold that much longer. The bottom line is we have a lot of oil here. We got a lot of natural gas. We got a lot of resources here. The last I read, there was in all of human history, I think we've used about $1 trillion, if I'm remembering the article right. It was an ABC News article a while back ago. Basically, in all of human history, we've used about 1 trillion barrels of oil, if I'm remembering this right. And we found about 3 trillion barrels of oil in America. So if that's right, it's off the top of my head, but regardless, we got hundreds of years worth of natural resources here, and the fact is we don't need hundreds of years worth of oil and petroleum and all these other byproducts. We don't need that. There's going to be a breakthrough if we let the free market run its course and the government gets out of its way, stops picking winners and losers. We're going to find something else. We're going to find another way to fund to power America. We don't need oil as much as we used to in the Middle East anyway. We have it here. We need to stop regulating the crap out of our people here so we can empower Americans, first of all, to create jobs doing this and get off of our dependence from foreign oil. That's my opinion. But again, people would say that we need to be in there because if we're not there, then Russia will get a hold of that oil and they'll start trying to restrict the oil going into Europe and our friendly nation countries, and they'll basically twist their arms in order to back them or whatever. Let me ask you, if Russia does indeed get all of the oil in the Middle East, let's just assume that they lock it all down. Every ounce of oil that's coming out of the Middle East is controlled by Russia. And they already got the Russian pipeline that goes into Europe, and they control that. So what if that happens? Do you think that if we have oil that we're producing here in America, ask yourself this question. We have oil that we're producing here in America, and we can export it to our friends around the world. Do you think that if they have a choice between buying American oil in a free market exchange or buying Russian oil, that they're twisting their arms and making them have to make deals with Russia, have to capitulate the Russian demands? Who do you think they're going to buy from? I would argue that if when faced with that situation, just in any general sense, just imagine yourself as a consumer. You go to a store. This store says, if you want to buy this, you gotta go pick up my dry cleaning every day. You got to be my servant once a week, Or you go to another store, same price, or maybe it's a little bit more expensive, and you go to the other store and they say, hey, yeah, all you got to do is give me the money. Just you give me the money, I'll give you the goods. And you're sitting there shocked, like, wait a minute, I don't have to pick up dry cleaning? I don't got to be your slave for a week? Okay, all right, yeah, that sounds good. Who wouldn't do that? That's free market exchange. I think it will work, and I think it will create jobs here in America. And if we deregulate the industrial sectors, if we get out of the way, we get the government out of the way, we can actually get off of oil. All these climate change people that want to restrict the crap out of industry and innovation, they're doing more harm to the climate than they could even hope to do through continued free market use of, and again, I say continued, but it's never actually been free market of oil. So if we just get out of the way, we'll come up with other stuff. I've mentioned this a couple episodes back, and I really like this documentary, Billions and Change, billionsandchange.com. Check that out. Not getting paid. They're not an advertiser or anything. I just think it's really awesome. The guy, it's a 5-hour energy drink guy. He's coming up with all these innovations in energy, medicine, and in actually not medicine, healthcare, and also water. Like water purification, obtaining water, doing so much stuff with this, and it just goes to show you that entrepreneurs are there. The ideas are there. If government stop picking winners and losers, and they stop putting up roadblocks in front of innovation, we can find a way around all of our problems. And again, back to the non-interventionism, we don't need to be in the Middle East. If even what the left says, if our intervention is causing these people to hate us, I would disagree. I don't necessarily think that's 100% the case. It may be a factor, but I think the ideology that they believe in is what's causing them to hate us. So, but even if we get out of there, we can take steps to make sure that our border is secure. We protect ourselves. Now, I'm not talking about building a wall. I'm not talking about sticking our head in the sand. I'm not trying to put us in a bubble. What I'm saying is that we just use the tools that are there, like selective immigration, making sure that we're controlling our foreign entanglements. Our founders talked about this. They said, beware of foreign entanglements. They didn't mean don't have friends. That's not what they meant at all. I mean, just look at the revolution. We were friends with France. But again, there was a lot of people, George Washington among them, was saying, you know what, France isn't America. And they had their concerns during the French Revolution. And they ended up being right. Thomas Jefferson, he was a big fan of France, and he was a big fan of the French Revolution, and then he saw things weren't working out the way he thought it was going to be. He thought it would be the next America. He ended up being wrong. But as far as having foreign entanglements, these alliances that we have, such as NATO, the United Nations, North Atlantic trade unions, we got European Union, things along those lines. Those are the things that our founders were concerned about. Things where we just automatically, like the article, I think it's Article 5 of the NATO alliance, where it says an attack on one is an attack on all. That's some pretty dangerous stuff. Where you enter into a war, essentially a global war, if that's what we're talking about, without even considering your options, without even thinking about, should we really do this? Just because we're allied with this person and they were attacked, did they have it coming? Let's look at Turkey. Turkey's not exactly a beacon of liberty in the world. all right? What happens to Turkey is none of our business, all right, unless we make it our business by getting involved. And I just don't think that we should. But Turkey shoots down a Russian plane. Russians responding and blowing the crap out of the Turkmen. And this whole thing in Syria is escalating, which is why I think that our government, they want us to get involved. They want us to be in there because, one false move and we are at war with Russia. It'd be a great way to cover up an economic collapse. It'd also be a great way to gin up the economy after an economic collapse. Great way to gain more control, fight for more territory, more spoils of war. I don't think that we should be getting into other people's business. Look, I understand that there's a lot of people dying. There's a lot of civilians, even from Russia, that are dying in Syria. There's a lot of people that are dying from ISIS. But us being there is not helping. We need to get out of there. And ultimately, people are responsible for their governments. People are responsible for their circumstances. Now, I understand that America created a lot of these circumstances from our interventions, from creating power vacuums to stabilizing governments. This is all I'm arguing here. The stuff I'm saying is all just an argument of why we don't need to be there. Because we're creating power vacuums and making it worse as time goes on. And it's not our job to go in, like, for example, with Libya, they got somebody who's tyrannical. It's not our job to go into Saudi Arabia and free the people. It's not our job to go into Egypt and try to, prop up a new government. This isn't our responsibility. Again, we're not the world police. We can't be responsible for other people. All we can do is be responsible for ourselves. It's okay to be humanitarian, but not... You don't want to help somebody to the point of shooting yourself in the foot. It doesn't make sense. If we help people to the detriment of ourselves, to the point of where our country falls apart, or as Donald Trump says, it's called having a country. If we hurt ourselves to that point, we're not going to be good to anybody at that point. I understand having a heart. I understand wanting to help others around the world. I get it. I don't have any problem with helping refugees. The problem I have is helping refugees in such numbers that they do not assimilate to our culture. They do not assimilate to our values. They break off into their own communities. They don't even bother to learn our language, our values. That's a problem. And then additionally, we talk about like providing resources, welfare, things along those lines to refugees. For example, Kathy on Facebook, she says she would like me to talk about Syrian refugees being welcomed here when we have a homeless population that needs help and the government turns their backs on these people. Well, look, first of all, Kathy, thanks so much for your input. First of all, I want to mention I'm not a big fan of turning to the government for mostly anything. I mean, I honestly believe that when government gets involved, situations get worse. Typically, that's the case. So, I think when we're talking about, helping the homeless population, first of all, I think that's on an individual basis. We have an obligation to our fellow man, not a legal obligation, a moral obligation. You have an obligation to help others if you can help others. I don't think there should be a morality police going around and arresting people who don't help the homeless. No. But if you have an opportunity to help somebody, I think it's a good and moral thing to help others. And I think at the individual level, we're able to better determine who is actually looking for a hand up rather than a hand out. Whereas with the government, it is not able to make that determination very well at all, if at all. In cases of Syrian refugees, we're talking about helping people come over to this country. Again, just in terms of immigration, I'm not talking about refugees. In terms of immigration, I think we should pick people to come here to become Americans who, first of all, want to be Americans. That's a very important factor. Do you want to be an American citizen? Yeah? Okay. Well, let's talk about some of your qualifications. Why should we pick you? You want to be an American. You're joining the team. You go through some tryouts. What are you going to bring to the table? Do you have a plan, or are you just here to get welfare? Oh, that's it? Okay, well, no, sorry. Next. Okay, what about you? You're a nurse? Oh, okay, yeah, we need nurses here in America. We have a a big need for nurses. We don't have enough American workers in the nursing field. So yeah, that's good. All right, so you got nursing skills and experience, education, and you don't want to be on welfare, and you want to be an American? Welcome aboard. Let's sign you up. And this process shouldn't take 9-10 years. It should be fast. It should be, well, we vet you properly. We put you through the right vetting process. Should not take 10 years to actually determine that someone is not a jihadist terrorist. That should not take that long. We should be able to determine very quickly and efficiently whether or not they're going to be a threat to this country. And again, if they want to be an American, that's very important. In terms of helping the homeless, again, I think this should be left to the churches and the individuals. Charity is excellent. And when we give that over to the government, I think it creates a really big vacuum, a moral vacuum. And I talk about this before. I've mentioned how statists, their philosophy, their morality is whatever the government says that they can do, and what they can't do is whatever the government says they can't do. So as long as it's legal, they're good. The government tells them their morality. So what is law is what is moral to them. And I don't subscribe to that, and I think many of you out there don't. A lot of people have a religious philosophy that guides their moral decisions. I tend to go by the non-aggression principle. Basically, you don't hurt other people, you don't steal their things. That's my philosophy. So when we're talking about people coming into this country and not taking our values, I think it's very damaging when you start bringing in huge groups of people that aren't going to bring anything to the table. And it's great to be helpful, but we have to make sure that we bring them in small enough groups. As far as refugees, we bring them in small enough groups to where they will assimilate and they'll be productive members of society. And we also got to filter out and make sure that these people aren't terrorists. We put them through extensive background checks and make sure we analyze them, talk to them, make sure they actually want to be Americans. And if they don't need our help then. I'm sorry, if you don't want to be an American, you just want to come here to mooch off the government, to mooch off someone else's labor, I'm sorry. Keep looking. Your circumstance sucks. And, in some ways, if you're talking about Syria, some ways that's our fault. But I don't think that we should continue to shoot ourselves in the foot by taking in more people who don't want to assimilate. That's just my opinion. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you have anything on your mind, give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, 360-450-5625. We're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we should be joined with Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. I'm really excited to talk to him. We're going to talk about a number of things. First, he has a clip that I'm going to play about Oregon gun control. We're going to talk about Planned Parenthood and the 2 indictments that came down against the investigative journalist. And also, I want to talk to him about the city of Portland, which is his alma mater. It's now named the most atheist city in America. So anyway, you guys don't want to miss this interview. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm LaVoy Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LaTashaWorley Tosha Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. So at this point, we are joined by my good friend Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. That's daylightdisinfectant.com, or you can find him on YouTube, youtube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. Hey, Dan, are you there?
I am here. Are you there, Mac?
I am there. You're loud and clear. First of all, I just want to say thanks for joining us, and let's start out on the first subject here. This Oregon gun control. What are they trying to do? And I have this clip that you posted. Do you mind if I play that clip after you explain, give a little breakdown of what was going on?
Not at all. I'll set the setting for your listeners. Yesterday, I was at a town hall at 11 o'clock at a place called Stevens Crossing here in Portland. It's public housing, Mac, and if you can try and imagine the most beautiful public housing you've ever seen in your lifetime. These people have it twice as good as I do. I'm an early retiree here in Portland, and it's just this amazing place. And on parade there were a group of senators and representatives. I think there were 5 of them up there, including the guy who's the head of the of all of funding for the senators there. Senator Richard Devlin is there, and Williamson is another person. It's Representative Williamson. She's the House Majority Leader. She's in some of these clips. But in any case, what they're trying to do here in Oregon is trying to jam through some anti-gun legislation during a very short session, which begins on Monday. And I know you have a lot of listeners in Oregon. The legislative session is not over; it's just starting here in Oregon. It's a short session, and they're going to try and do some very egregious things to clamp down on your guns. And you really have to pay attention. The numbers are all in the videos that are out there at daylightdisinfectant.com and at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. Listen to them, write down the number as you're listening to the video, and call the legislator and tell them no to these things, because they are some egregious things. I don't know which clip you're going to play, but I can try and talk to it for you, Mac.
Let's see. I got the 1,300 Oregons will wait up to 6 months.
Oh, that's Williamson. She's unbelievable. This Representative Williamson, there's something that they are calling, and the liberals are the masters of the euphemism. So they're calling it the Carolina loopholes, okay? And what this is that in our background checks bill, theoretically we don't have gun registration here in Oregon. But there's a huge but on that, and they keep records on the state police keep the records on the background checks. So they know who has guns, who doesn't have guns, and where they bought them. They can easily trace you to a serial number, easily here. So there is de facto gun registration on a national basis, not just here in Oregon. But getting back to this Carolina loophole, when you apply for a background check here in Oregon, there's no way to buy a gun without one. Not anymore. Last year they closed out the quote-unquote loophole, which allowed me to do a private sale to my friend. Let's say I have a friend, Mike, and I want to sell him my Glock, okay? And I can sell it to him for $300. In the old days, I could just sell it to him, knowing that he was not an ex-convict, okay, and that he's a good friend of mine, and that he's a reliable person. It's a buddy-buddy system, and we all know who the good guys are. And so we used to be able to have private gun sales that way, not anymore. Now we have to do a background check. But the ticket on the background check, Mac, is that if after 3 days the state police could not show that they did not have cause to deny you, then you automatically got your background check approved and you could get your gun, okay? And that is a very important thing. Well, what they're trying to do now is make it so that after those 3 days expire, if they cannot get the records they need from any county, anywhere in the United States of America, any place, then you will not get your background check, and you got to wait. And in one of the other videos that I have up there right now, you can hear them talking about how in L.A. County right now it takes 6 months, minimum of 6 months to get information out on you if you've ever had any sort of domestic complaint on you with Los Angeles County. So what's going to happen here inside this video clip is she is going to describe in their own statistics that at least, if you back through the statistics, at least 1,300 Oregonians that deserve to get their gun, some of them being women who will be raped or whatever, or assaulted or whatever, and won't have a gun to protect themselves, that these people who legitimately should own a firearm will be denied if this legislation goes through.
So here's the clip. We got the bumper, and it's giving the information here. By the way, this is House Majority Leader Representative Jen Williamson. She's a Democrat, District 36, Portland. If you guys, just out there, just putting this out there, if you guys want to message or call her, her phone number is 503-986-1436. That's 503-986-1436. Her email, and MacPack, I would love it if you guys would send her a nice, polite email letting her know what you think about this. It's rep, R-E-P dot Jennifer, Jennifer Williamson, Williamson at state.or.us. That's rep.jenniferwilliamson at state.or.us. That's really long. Anyway, here's the clip.
And all of her information is in the About section under the video. So if you look under the video, you can see all of her contact information. Please, if you're in Oregon, call Jennifer Williamson when this segment is done. This person is going to see to it that 1,300 Oregonians next year alone who deserve to get a gun will not be able to get one. Their constitutional right will be denied to them, but if her legislation passes.
And here's her own words.
For the bill I mentioned, one of the problems we have is that we're not in control of all of the information we need for background checks. So the superintendent of the state police told me that when something doesn't quickly go through the system, there may be a flag. It may be something like a domestic violence restraining order in another county or in another state. So somebody has to pick up the phone and call that county in that other state and say, so what was the relationship between these two people? Because I need to figure out if it fits under Oregon law. And so that's the kind of research we're talking about. He also said if you call LA County to get any sort of record out of LA County, it takes 6 months. So there's no way that background check is coming back, and there's nothing we can do about it. And so he said, please give us the time and energy to make sure that our resources that we need to do this right. We do 250,000 background checks in Oregon every year. 250,000, which I think is shocking, first of all. But what we're talking about is potentially 1,800 people who would have to wait to get their background checks. And about 500 of those are prohibited people. So we're not talking about a huge burden on the vast majority of the gun-buying public. We're talking about a small number of people who have something in their background that's causing a flag.
So that is that's on his website or on his YouTube, Daylight Disinfectant. That's youtube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. Please go there and subscribe to Dan. If you like my stuff, you're gonna love his stuff. I'm a big fan of Dan on there. First of all, Dan, this to me I think is striking because one of the most basic things that our Constitution lays out is that, first of all, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is obviously an infringement if somebody has to wait 6 months. But also, this actually violates the due process clause where there is literally no process that someone can go through in order to get around this background check that is taking 6 months. If this goes through, this is going to be 1,300 Oregonians, and that's by her own numbers, that are going to be denied the right to keep and bear arms and denied a process to get around it. We talked about last week, by the way, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. They've stopped processing appeal denials. Appeal denials. So people are getting denied, and it's 7,100 of them are getting denied, and they're trying to appeal. People who are appealing are probably going to be people that should have the right to keep and bear arms anyway, because it's illegal. It's a felony to try to buy a gun, and if you're appealing, you're obviously going to be somebody who thinks that you have the right to keep and bear arms still. So with this, they're denying due process left and right. So what do you think about this, Dan?
Well, I think for sure. And, it used to be, under the current law, or under the law right now, shall not be infringed. Right now, I've got to wait, it could take that background check up to 3 days. And it could be only that, my understanding is it could be only that someone filed a complaint against me, or or what do you want to call it, a restraining order that is, it's not really a legitimate restraining order. They did it to harass me, okay? So they went down and filed one, and the judge gave them one, and then it was removed 3 days later in Los Angeles County because the judge said, that's a joke, okay? But if you have that on your record, okay, now up here in the state of Oregon, you will be denied. If that happened to you in Los Angeles County, I can almost guarantee you from what she said, these are by their own words, these are by the Democrats' own words, that for 6 months, they have to do a written request, and it will take 6 months to get the details of what that particular restraining order was about, and then they can look to see whether it was a family relationship of some kind, in which case it came under Oregon law that they could deny you a firearm, okay? So, but in 1 year, she's saying that 1,500 of these things will be processed and kicked back, and only 1,800. And in 500 of those, there'll be legitimate people who should not have guns. People who have a criminal record that should not own a gun. So she's saying those 1,300 people that get denied their firearm for 6 months. Well, that's an acceptable delay for those 1,300 people. Well, sure, it's acceptable for you. Okay, you go to work in a building that's guarded by security guards with armed guards all day long. Okay, these poor women have to get up in the morning in some shabby apartment in Eugene or in Portland or wherever else we're talking about, godless Portland, okay? But, you have to get to work, and you're afraid of that dirtbag ex-boyfriend of yours, showing up to assault you, to rape you, whatever he's going to do, and you're at his whim because some stupid state bureaucracy, I'm sorry, Jennifer Williamson, I don't know you from a hole in the wall, but I have to sit in front of you and listen to your ilk, okay, through this thing. But you don't care about that woman. She has not a care in the world about that woman who's going to be raped or killed, or she hasn't given a thought to it, okay? But she needs to give a thought to it because your actions are not without consequences. And there's a reason why we all have a right to defend ourselves inside the Constitution because we're free human beings. We don't have to depend on the police force. As a matter of fact, if we depend on the police force, all they're going to be able to do is just mop up the mess, 20 minutes later when the cruiser shows up? So that's not going to help any of us at all, okay? So I don't agree with you, Jennifer Williamson, that 1,000 people a year that should get firearms and that are not going to get them inside the state of Oregon is acceptable. And if you folks don't believe it either, go out to daylightdisinfectant.com. The videos are posted up there in the first article. And you can see Jennifer Williamson's representative. She's a House Majority Leader, Jennifer Williamson from state of Oregon, who is pushing for this close the loophole, which is essentially deny 1,000 people their guns next year. And if I can go on for one more part about that law that's coming up, Matt.
Go for it.
One other thing, and your folks will see a video out there, and I want to solicit your thoughts on that. But the state of Oregon, these people, Williamson wants to have set up a 1-800, this is my words, okay, a 1-800 rat-out number, okay, so that if you feel that someone you know is a danger with their firearm, you can call in and anonymously report your neighbor, okay, that you think there's going to be a problem with guns. State agency that's going to be run by state bureaucrats to call this thing. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Isn't that what 911, the police are for? Yeah. Aren't they supposed to sort through this stuff? And who are these people who are going to be monitoring these phone calls? To me, I labeled it a Stasi-like law because it reminds me of, if you've ever seen the movie The Lives of Others, which won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film, a German film about East Germany, that's exactly what happened in East Germany, and it was exactly what happened in 1984, George Orwell's 1984, which is that you get a bunch of people all reporting their neighbors to get ahead in society, and that's exactly what they're trying to put into place. It's a 1-800 number to rat on your gun neighbors. That's basically what they're trying to put in this legislative session. They might get that one, Mac. I couldn't find the unconstitutionality of that one. I think that they might be able to get it. Well, I don't see why not.
So as far as my take on that, first of all, I agree with you. This entire thing, as far as a rat outline, there is already something in existence. It's called 911, and what this is doing is essentially they're lowering the standard so that people don't feel like, I can't call that number because it's not an emergency. I'll call this number because it's okay. It's not an emergency. They haven't done anything. They haven't had any actions that I feel are threatening. I'm just going to call because they have a gun and I know they're a gun owner, and maybe they got a NRA sign in their front lawn. It's scary, stuff like that. But in addition question: who the hell is going to pay for this line? Who's paying the salaries of the people there? This is just increasing the tax burden needlessly, and I find it a little bit despicable that gun owners are being taxed to pay for a hotline designed to rat them out and punish them, essentially just for being gun owners. And I think you're right, making the correlations between Nazi Germany and brown shirts and things like that. This is the whole philosophy of if you see something, say something, tell the government, narc on your neighbor. This is I don't like that whole idea. I think mind your business. As long as nobody's hurting you or stealing your property, mind your business.
I agree with you. You know, what's going to happen when I call the 1-800 number to rat out the guy wearing Arab clothing that's walking down my street? Okay, that complaint is going to get ignored. I can tell you that right now in the state of Oregon.
You'll probably have officers,
and you're going to be called a racist. You're going to be called a racist. And what's going to happen when you call out the guy with the GOP sticker and the NRA sticker that's pulling the banjo case out of his, because he does play the banjo, but you feel he might be some sort of threat, or you're thinking you want to harass him today. Okay, you call that number up. The person on the other end of that line in the state of Oregon, since everybody inside the Willamette Valley is a liberal, that's going to get put at the top of it. You're going to get a visit. That's what's going to happen. You're going to get a visit. And so people are going to, and it has a stifling effect. I don't want to go on and on about this, but you have a stifling effect on the First Amendment. People will no longer feel free to express themselves in our society. And that becomes, and we're getting that now with what's going on out in Bern anyway, and what happened out in Bern with the murder of this guy. But we are getting that anyway. It's a stifling effect on the freedom of speech in the state of Oregon right now. And if you guys don't want to do anything about this, that's fine. But I showed up at that town hall yesterday, and I filmed that stuff. That is craziness. And this Jennifer Williamson is the new Ginny Burdick. I'm telling you, and Ginny Burdick is the strongest advocate of gun control legislation next to Senator Floyd Brzezinski. It now goes Burdick, Brzezinski, or Brzezinski, Burdick, and then Jennifer Williamson, the state representative, and her contact information is out there on the web. You can just Google Oregon State Representative Jennifer Williamson, and it will come up. She is pushing this legislation for both closing the loophole, which will deny people their gun checks and their background checks, and this 1-800 number. They are trying to push both these things through. The anti-gunners are in full swing. It's a very short period, so if we can gum up the works for a couple of weeks here, they won't be able to push these things through. They just won't have enough time to marshal the votes to get them through. But if we don't do anything, if we do nothing, then it's like you were saying earlier, all that evil needs to succeed is for good men to do nothing. If we do nothing here, those gun bills are going to get through.
Exactly. Yeah, and the thing about it is, too, we have to win every single battle. They keep coming at us and coming at us and coming at us. We have to win every single one of these battles, or else we lose ground. And to me, it's very disheartening, because if we lose just one, if we lose one battle, we lost ground. And it seems like the slippery slope. We just keep moving further and further down. I have a speech here from this Williamson from the archives. I want to play this little quick clip here of her talking about gun control. I think you guys will like this.
Dieses Wissen zur Führung der Nation erhoben hat und entschlossen ist, diese Führung zu behalten, und nicht abzugeben.
Oh, sorry. I think I got mixed up.
What's wrong, Cliff?
Close enough. Anyway, moving on. Let's see here. I want to talk actually. Still on the gun control thing, I know we've been kind of hammering this, but I've been getting really fed up with the compromising, and I'm seeing us move further towards compromising with these people. We gave them background checks. The only compromise that left to say that they've essentially made is that we're still allowed to have the guns that we have now. But if they have it their way, not only will they be registered, eventually they'll be confiscated and outlawed, and it's not going to do a damn thing to keep us safer. So.
No, it's going to make more. Indeed, it's going to make the situation more dangerous, but in a way that is less numerically accountable. So, for example, there will be less people concealed carrying firearms here in the state of Oregon, and therefore a rise in crime that you will not be able to correlate, because the dirtbags know. They know here in the state of Oregon that pretty much, if you've been a good person most of your life here in the state of Oregon, you're going to be able to conceal carry a gun. And that's why we don't have liquor store robberies and bar robberies to the epidemic proportions that you have in places, and you probably have some listeners out there that should call in from Chicago, Illinois. I mean, it's lawless out there because you know that the good guys don't carry guns. The only guys with guns are the bad guys. And slowly, it's as you're saying, Mac, as each one of these little bills passes, they're slowly restricting your gun sales till it's going to be a very small. We'll be like Massachusetts, where to get a gun, it takes an act of God. You can do it, but it takes an act of God. Now you could say that's unconstitutional. It may very well be, but the people of Massachusetts have decided they tolerate it, and they do, and no one has guns. So it's what you want. It's what the people want, and if the people don't pay attention, and they learn this phraseology, Mac. So they're calling it the Carolina loophole. Okay, so it sounds like something that you'd want to close. Loopholes are things you want to close, but that's not the truth of the matter. If you look at the truth of the matter, they are euphemizing. They are putting a candy coating on finding you guilty until they prove you innocent. And in the process, we'll find 1,000 people guilty for a year, okay, until they can sort it all out, okay, and then you'll be able to get your gun. So, you have to be careful of the language. Watch for language like loophole. Once you see that, you know that they're trying to slip something through on you. Isn't right, and that'll never be given back. Once we pass that, that's forever. That's not going to come back.
So one of the things that I've been getting upset about more and more, and I've talked to so many people, especially my stance on gun rights. I'm very, very pro gun rights, and I don't believe that any restrictions should be put upon the right to keep and bear arms. I think that the Constitution specifically prohibits it, but even if it didn't, that's an individual right. I believe a natural right of self-defense. And anyway, my whole point here is that I'm getting really upset with people within our own gun community. I feel like we've been getting brainwashed by the left to just accept and state things that are false to be true. And what I mean by that, I've talked to people who say background checks, and these are gun rights supporters, say background checks save lives. Background checks prevent crime. Background checks are good things, and they support background checks. First of all, I don't. I do not support background checks at all. I refuse to capitulate with these leftists. I do not believe that background checks make us any safer. In fact, I think it makes us less safe. And I'm curious, Dan, where do you stand on this? Are you willing to compromise that on that issue and say background checks are a necessary evil, or do you think that we should just stop compromising on background checks at all?
Well, I think that if you go through a dealer, I honestly think the system here in Oregon worked fairly well, which was going through a dealer, okay, and this 3-day law that if it can't prove you guilty, then you're innocent. You can get your gun sale. I think that worked pretty well. And what I want to say in that discussion is that, okay, let's say we go with the argument that background checks are a good thing. Or let's say we go with the situation that concealed carry is not really allowed, like in the state of Massachusetts. And you can conceal carry, but it's very special circumstances, okay? So let's go with a situation like that, or in Chicago, where you can't really conceal carry. What's the give back on that? And the give back on that is that the bad guys don't go through a background check anyway. They are going to get a hold of a firearm. The guys in Paris, right, one of the most difficult places in the world to get a firearm, okay? They all had automatic weapons, okay? Mm-hmm. So, when you look at it, the bad guys are always going to have guns, okay? It doesn't matter your background checks or whatever. But what you're going to do is you are going to take guns away from law-abiding citizens who should be able to protect themselves. And at another level, Mac, you're 100% correct. It's a natural right. If people are going to start telling me what I can and cannot own, I can't own a gun. Okay. Can I own a knife? Can I own a baseball bat with nails sticking out of it? What other weapons can I own to protect myself? And when it comes down to what you can't own, okay, then it comes down to it's the same thing, what you can believe and what you can't believe, and what you can say and what you can't say. And that freedom of thought, freedom of ownership, freedom of belief, that is what was intrinsic in the Founding Fathers. And that's what makes us Americans, that we are all free men. And when you begin to chip away at that, it's a slippery slippery slope that we go down, as they say, right, where we can no longer believe or say the things that we believe in anymore. And that's where we're going. Every time you say, oh, yeah, well, background checks save lives, bring it back to what you were saying, too. So I think it's okay if I give up this freedom. Be careful, because it just continues to erode and continues to erode till we're no longer free-thinking individuals anymore.
I've said on the last show, what one generation accepts, the next embraces, and that's the thing. And I think we've hit that point when it comes to background checks. It used to be, this was us making a huge compromise. We were saying, okay, we'll allow you to do background checks. We disagree with it, but we'll allow it. We'll make a huge compromise, even though there are no statistics that prove gun control actually reduces violent crime. There's none. You can't prove that controlling guns prevents crime in any way, and that's not the agenda anyway. It's to control the people. Gun control is people control. That's all it is. It doesn't save any lives. I'm completely against it, and I'm done capitulating and compromising with these people, these psychopaths that don't actually care about helping people. Some of them want to just feel good, want to feel like they've done something by not doing anything at all, just making a decree, writing a law saying that, oh, look, I've done something. I've protected the people. But really, they're hurting people. They're preventing people from being able to defend themselves. As you said, it doesn't stop criminals from getting guns. And again, this is all. I've made this example before, but I think it's very prescient in this conversation. This is not treating root causes. The background checks treat a symptom of a problem, and this is no different than like if you have a chest wound, you're shot in the chest. This is no different than me trying to clean up the blood off the floor rather than patch up the bullet hole and stop the blood from coming out and treat the root cause. What our root cause is, the reason why we have to have background checks is because we're letting violent criminals back out on the street. If you're a violent criminal, you should not be allowed out of jail until there is not a chance that you're going to be a violent criminal again. But because we have this prison industrial complex where it's a money churning machine, they want to get people in and out as quick as possible. That way they can make more money off of them. We're filling up our prisons full of nonviolent offenders who have drug charges, and it's a racket. It's all of it is a racket.
I agree with you, Mac. The crimes that are getting persecuted, and see, this is the thing: is you have to look at it, and you've really hit the nail on the head with you're looking at drug crimes. I mean, the prisons are filled with these crimes that essentially hurt no one but yourself. Injection drug users or whatever. It's a medical problem. We can have arguments about this all the time, but putting these people in prisons is not helping society, and it's a drain on resources. And it prevents you from addressing what real violent crimes are and keeping rapists and people who will commit assaults and psychopaths, okay, which is a genuine phenomenon. These people who will never be cured. You can read about psychopaths online, what they really are. These people will never be cured. They will kill and kill and kill again until you separate them. You ask them, if you can get them at a truthful moment, they will say, there's no way. I will lie in any way I can to get out of here so I can kill or rape again. Okay, and that's what, it's the Hannibal Lecters of the world, that you really have to separate from society, and you're draining on those resources with, petty criminals inside of inner city areas that are using and dealing drugs. And I'm not saying that that's not a problem, but I'm just saying that the prison system is probably not the best way to deal with that thing. And as a matter of fact, putting them in there kind of breeds more violent crime, because these people learn to do bigger and bigger crimes, to graduate once you go inside there, and you'll never get out. It's a revolving door.
Which is exactly why we need to keep their butts in there. That's the thing. The question is not like, why are we preventing these people from getting guns? Like, how can we prevent criminals or evil people, bad people from getting guns? It's, why are we allowing bad people back out on the streets that pose a threat to society? If they're dangerous, if they haven't actually paid their debt to society, why are they walking our streets?
And I think that a lot of these, in a lot of cases, the jails are just full, like, as you were saying, and they're full with people. Many of those people ought not be there. Okay, but and they're going to let go of the wrong people. And you're right. You're addressing the bullet wound in the side. You're not addressing the fact that the bullet could have been kept in the gun to begin with, and that's separating these people from firearms. Bad guys, violent criminals are always going to find their way to a gun.
So
there's no way you're gonna prevent it. It's like cockroaches. You're not going to be able to stop it. You can only control it.
So Dan, I'm pretty much, we got a roundabout answer from you, but I want to get a hard yes or no. Do you support background checks for guns? Yes or no?
I'm going to have to ruminate on that one a bit.
All right.
Should anyone? What? Okay. Well, I think the real question there is: should a convicted violent felon be able to buy a gun? And I don't believe in branding them, okay, with a yellow star on their shoulder. But if you've been convicted of a violent crime, I don't think that you should be able to buy a gun for quite some time until you can have that expunged with your record. So I guess, Matt, I would say in limited circumstances, yes, limited background checks. But if you can't do it quickly, forget. If you can't show quickly, if you don't show up as being a violent offender right away, you get your gun. I would say you have to err on the side of the person's rights, the person's natural rights. But once you've committed a violent crime, you've given up those natural rights. Okay, you've given that up because you said you're no longer human. Now you are a beast that cannot control your urges. Okay, and so you have to be treated as such. So you lost your rights. Okay, and so that you cannot exist in a free society like that. And so I would say yes, Mac. There has to be a check. Not on a private sale. A private sale can be done between individuals, and if an individual sells a firearm to someone knowingly that person is a violent criminal, or they should have known, okay, that person is a violent criminal, then they are guilty of a crime as well.
Oh,
okay,
man.
So that needs to stand, and if I would repeal that part of the Oregon law. I would leave the background checks in place, but I would even shorten it from 3 days. Okay, I would say you get one pass through a database. If nothing pings off on you, and they can't show that you were convicted of a violent crime, then you're going to get your gun. And these petty crimes, misdemeanors, and things like restraining orders and that kind of stuff, that doesn't hold water. You get your gun. You have to prove that this person is someone who's already taken abuse with the system before they're not allowed to get their firearm.
This is why I like talking with you, because you and I, we don't see eye to eye on everything, and I like the fact that we can have rational discussions about stuff that we disagree with.
So you think that? Well, I'll turn around you, Mac. You answer me, okay? I answered your question. Now you answer my question.
Go for it.
A violent criminal walks into the gun store. If Charles Manson gets paroled in San Francisco, I think, where is he? San Francisco? He's in California someplace. Maybe Sacramento. I don't know where his prison is. Let's say he gets paroled, and let's say he hops a train up to Portland, and he walks into a gun shop. Should he be able to walk out the door with a gun?
Okay, so first of all, I would say no, but let me explain this. What we're talking about is societal changes here. Either way, this is we're changing society. What I'm saying is that we prevent Charles Manson from ever getting out of prison. Anybody who has committed an act of violence, we don't let them out of prison unless we know that that individual proves, and I don't know how they do that. That burden of proof will be on them. And if we don't pack our prisons full of these nonviolent offenders, people who haven't committed a crime that has produced a victim, the only victim is themselves, if we deregulate and stop putting nonviolent criminals in jail, we reserve our jail for the worst of the worst of the worst. We don't have to worry about prison overcrowding, things along those lines. We have the animals in jail, and they have to prove that they have changed in some way, that they're no longer a threat to society. They have to, in fact, actually pay their debt to society. I would argue that Charles Manson cannot pay his debt to society. You have three options. I disagree with the first one of putting him to death. I disagree with the death penalty. Keep him in jail forever, or ostracizing him, and that's not an option. We can't just send him out to no man's land, because that's not the way the world works anymore. In history, there used to be villages, and if somebody did something that was that bad and they couldn't keep them locked up forever, they just said, go away and never come back. So the only option we have is locking them up until they're no longer a threat. People like Charles Manson, they're going to be a threat because they're crazy. So you keep them locked up. We're talking about
capital punishment.
Yeah, but
I don't know if you believe in capital punishment.
Yeah, I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't like the idea that the government will kill somebody, because I know that governments make mistakes, and that's a pretty big power to give your government to kill its own people. I disagree with that. I think that if we just kept them in jail and we only had the really, really bad guys in jail, and everyone that wasn't a murderer or a violent felon, instead of locking them in jail, if they just stole something, instead of actually putting them in a jail cell, let's make them work to pay back the damage that the cost of the individual that they stole from. Get this person whole again. Locking somebody, for example, Dan, if I stole a car from you, all right, it doesn't help you at all to have me locked in jail and you now have to pay taxes to feed me, and I didn't pay you anything back. I didn't make you whole again by locking me in the jail.
Compounding the damages.
Exactly. So that's the point. Get the bad people and lock them in a cage and don't let them out until they're not likely to be a threat and they have in fact paid their debt to society. We don't have to go around punishing the rest of society because there's bad people in our society. When we find them, we remove them. We make sure that they're not in society anymore. And that way we don't have to worry about Charles Manson walking into a gun store, buying a gun, unless it's the first time he's ever done anything, and we can't pass preemptive laws. We don't have a pre-crime division. We can't start punishing people before they do things at all. We have to wait until they do something and then punish them for what they've done. And let's be real, prison, it's not rehabilitation. No one goes in prison rehabilitated unless they find God or decide to change themselves. The prison system doesn't rehabilitate anyone. It actually makes them worse, hardened criminals. They learn from other criminals, as you said. So it makes sense to keep them in prison. Stop putting these people that weren't so bad of criminals into jail with the really bad ones. Now they come out even worse than they were before. And again, we punish everybody in society for the actions of bad actors. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, yeah, I guess you have to look at it that way. But you're going to have a huge reduction in the number of paroles that happen. So that paroles just aren't really going to happen. Parole is used to ease the burden on the prison system right now.
I agree.
That's the thing. So you come up with parole. So these people who now have a hope of getting out, okay, are no longer going to have hope of getting out. And I think the people who run the institutions would argue, and I don't know if there's much truth in that, Mac, but the people who run the institutions would say, this hope, this good credit for getting out towards your parole, you earn credits towards getting parole while you're in there, is what keeps down violence and bad behavior and makes a prison manageable inside. Because otherwise, there's no incentives for these guys to behave themselves inside prison.
Again, I completely agree with having a way for somebody to earn their way back into society. I agree with that completely. And if you do in fact get out, if you have gone into prison, you have actually paid your debt, you have proved that you have good behavior, you've proved that you're going to be a benefit to society and you're no longer a threat. Again, I don't know how the parole boards work to determine these kind of things. I think the policy and the board itself, the requirements should be a lot more stringent than they are, and we should never just let somebody out because we need room, for more nonviolent drug offenders. But the idea that first of all, people have to have consequences for their action. I believe in personal responsibility. So if you make a bad choice, you should have to pay for that. I shouldn't have to pay for that because you murder somebody and now you've been released from jail. I shouldn't have to pay for your action by having to submit to a background check. Whereas also, you made a mistake. If you got locked up in jail, you made a decision. Unless you got unjustly convicted or something along those lines, and there's plenty of that in our society. But unless you didn't do anything at all, you're just a victim of circumstance. You made a decision, and because I believe in personal responsibility, you should have to pay the piper. That you are the one responsible for your actions. And sometimes we make mistakes, and I believe that. I really do believe in second chances. I think that people should be given second chances. But for heinous crimes, murder, rape, those kind of people, especially premeditated or serial killers, psychopaths, those people don't need to be in society, especially after they've killed somebody. The way I look at it is that you take a life, you no longer should be in our society, especially if it was intentional and premeditated. I mean, that's just where I stand. But
and at that point, you've earned bare sustenance, basically, your roof, your food, and your health care for the rest of your existence on the backs of the taxpayers at a rudimentary level, and we're only paying for that for the folks who are dangerous to society. And people who commit crimes against themselves, let's say drugs and prostitution type crimes, are committing crimes against themselves. And so are these really crimes? And shouldn't we begin to look at that and look at what the cost to society is of punishing these people for behaviors that we deem as morally bad, when they're only crimes against yourself, and maybe we should let those people out. I think that you're seeing it has been a lot of legislators looking at minimum sentencing for drug crimes and turning that back. And I think that's a good thing. If you get caught for with over an ounce of cocaine, you go in for minimum of 5 years in this book that I'm reading right now in Brooklyn. I think that it seems like that's a lot for me. Okay, yeah, an ounce of cocaine. Well, that's a lot of cocaine. Okay, but still, what's the real damage that's being done there? Okay, if you stuck a gun in someone's face, that'd be something different. Okay,
yeah.
But if a cop shook you down and found cocaine on you, I'm not so sure there should be minimum sentencing for that kind of thing. And let those people more slide into society and ease the burden to the taxpayer there, and ratchet up especially repeat offenders for violent crimes. Those people should never see the light of day. You don't have to worry about selling them a gun. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But Mac, how are you going to? I don't see, without doing a background check, I don't see how you're going to sort it out. You're never going to have a perfect system. So there's always going to be people walking around.
But that's the point.
Escapees. Okay, how do you handle an escapee? So what you're telling me is that, okay, let's say a violent criminal escapes, okay, and let's say they walk into a gun shop.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They just get a gun?
Yeah. Okay. If a violent criminal escapes, they get a gun. Okay. That's a crappy situation. But if we live in a free society, listen though. If we live in a free society, people will have the guns to defend themselves. It doesn't matter if a bad guy has a gun when all the good guys have access to guns for the purpose of self-defense. I understand. This is a societal change I'm talking about. Reforming our prison system, the way that we operate, instead of allowing these violent people back out into societies that pose threats. And this is something that we all have to pay the price for bad people's behavior. That's a societal change that I'm talking about, but it's no different than a societal change that the left is talking about. The only difference is my idea will actually lessen violent crime. My idea will actually make us safer. Their idea will do nothing to make us safer. In fact, it makes us less safe while simultaneously violating our individual rights and freedom. So I guess you can go either way, depending on how you want to go. They're both societal changes, but one goes towards liberty and one does not.
That's for sure. And history is proving you correct here in the state of Oregon, because once they get a background check, any kind of a background check in place, and one of the reasons how they got that law in there to begin with is this 3-day rule. If they can't show within 3 days that you don't deserve it, then you get it. And now they're going to water that down, Mac, and then they'll water it down again after this one. They'll continue to do that, just slowly. Then they'll make it an application process, okay, that takes days, that like they have in Massachusetts, and slowly it gets eroded. It's not overnight. It's like cooking the frog in the pot on the stove. You lose your freedoms a little bit at a time. So maybe altruism is the only way to go there and say, hey, you know what? Any background check is not allowed. Are there states that still don't require a background check? I don't know if that exists.
No, well, I'm sure it's a federal requirement in order to from an FFL. That's a federal license. So yeah, I mean, especially if you're going to be buying it over state lines, somebody selling from somebody out of state, you have to have a background check. Hey, I'm getting some breaking news right now, by the way, Dan. We'll go ahead and talk about this on the air since we're on the subject here. This is an article from ABC News. .com.co. This could be fake. Never mind. I'm not even going to talk about this. I don't know if this is legit or not. I got this from a listener, but I'll just go ahead and mention it. I don't know if this is true or not. President Obama signs executive order limiting U.S. gun owners to 3 guns. I don't know. That sounds pretty ridiculous.
No way. How would you enforce it? There's no way, because the sheriffs won't enforce it, so it doesn't even matter.
It doesn't even matter. I don't know if that's accurate.
Would have. Oh my God! You would have. I know certain people that would have to. Well, it would. Let's put it this way: it would free up a lot of space in their homes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, empty out some closets. It's spring
You can
cleaning.
rent out the extra room.
Yeah. Well, hey, Dan, we got to cut to a commercial break. Would you mind sticking with us for the break? I want to talk with you about Planned Parenthood and this Portland being the most atheist city in America.
Don't touch that dial, folks. You're listening to the On the Move Show with Mack Worley and his guest, Dan Sandini.
There we go. All right, we'll be right back after this break, guys. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, gang, we're back. I have Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. That's daylightdisinfectant.com. That's also youtube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. Please subscribe to him on YouTube. He's a good friend of mine, fellow patriot. Dan, are you still there?
I am. A lot of gun videos out there. Been busy over the weekend, so if folks want to hear about what's going on with the gun legislation in Oregon, I think that's what Mac brought me today. So we're starting a new session, and there's new gun bills that are coming here to the state of Oregon. So more gun control. More bad news and more gun control coming to your neighborhood soon.
Yep. And so Dan is a citizen journalist in Oregon. He lives in Portland. Sorry to put you out there, Dan, but I want to get your
living downtown. It's right out on my YouTube channel, and it's right out on my blog that I am inspired by James O'Keefe and Andrew Breitbart, and I do my work from the belly of the beast in Portland, Oregon.
So hey, being that you like Breitbart, I'm curious. What do you think about Breitbart, the news agency now? How they have been backing Donald Trump, knowing that Breitbart himself said Donald Trump is not a conservative. What do you think about that?
Well, I can tell you a little bit that you might not be privy to, which is that Breitbart, shortly after Breitbart died, was bought by Citizens United. So Breitbart is owned by it's not a secret. I mean, you could probably look it up someplace if you wanted to. But Stephen K. Bannon, the guy who directed the film that I was in, Occupy Unmasked, which your listeners can see on Netflix and also on Amazon Prime. Occupy Unmasked was underwritten by Citizens United, and Stephen K. Bannon, who's one of the bigwigs there, was the director for that film. Nice guy, and I don't have anything against Citizens United as well, but I think it's very important for your listeners to note that once Breitbart passed away, okay, you'll notice that most of the folks that had anything to do with that place to begin with, Larry O'Connor, who's the editor-in-chief, Breitbart.com, gone, so most of the people who had anything to do with the place are gone, and it's changed from, when Breitbart owned the place, that's how, I sort of got on the map, and Laughing at Liberals and a bunch of the other YouTubers got on the map, as Breitbart just saw this, and he started with James O'Keefe, and taking down Acorn, and so that it was a conglomerator of individual efforts and YouTube channels, and now it's just become more of a sort of spin on the mainstream, I would say. So, you're looking at much more of a mainstream outlook, much more of a filtered inside Republican. This is the inside crowd in the Republican Party that owns Breitbart. Basically bought the thing outright once Breitbart passed away.
They've taken a complete pivot on Trump. There are several sites. Here's a Washington Times article. It says that Breitbart staffers accuse the side of accepting Trump money in exchange for positive
that's an
mentions.
Interesting article. I have not seen that yet. That's going to be interesting. Is there a name in that?
Let
me see a name anywhere?
As far as the person who wrote it?
Or person who took the money.
Oh, no. Apparently Breitbart is denying. Breitbart's denying taking any money from Trump, but I wanted to put that out there. So let's move here to this Planned Parenthood thing. This thing really disturbs me. This is probably one of the most upsetting pieces of news that I've run across recently. So, Texas grand jury, they clear Planned Parenthood of any wrongdoing. The videos that were released where Planned Parenthood was seen trying to exchange money for baby fetus body parts, baby body parts. And that's federally illegal to sell body parts, but yet they're doing it. They're on tape. They're talking about how they want to make a profit on it and buy a Lamborghini, those kind of things, jokingly about this. It's disturbing enough that we continue to fund Planned Parenthood by the federal government, where they're taking everybody's money, even people that may be morally opposed to abortions, and they're using that money to fund this thing. But not only that, not only did the Texas grand jury clear Planned Parenthood of any wrongdoing, they indicted its accusers, the people who made the video. So, Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, it's just one more example of the liberals that are in power in the United States of America. And so what's happening in Texas is that at the county level, this is a liberal prosecuting attorney who has been shown proven links on the board of Planned Parenthood, who is coming after these reporters who exposed Planned Parenthood. And what your listeners have to pull out of this is it's just one more way that the government stifles free thought and free thinking and conservative thought and free thinking. And they did it honestly. I mean, you probably would not make this case, but I would make this case that if we could see the inside communications on your case back in the state of Washington, you have what's going on, which is prosecutorial discretion. Mm-hmm. And prosecutorial discretion in the city of Vancouver was used to target you because you were brazen enough to open carry a firearm well within the law inside the city of Vancouver. And for me, on the other hand, I had some people who committed a violent assault against me. The people who did that were caught on tape, and they were liberals, and they were not prosecuted for doing that. My friend, laughing at liberals, had his arm broken in 3 places by a liberal on tape, caught on tape. The prosecuting attorney, big liberal, would not enforce the law, would not bring this guy to court. Steven Crowder out in Wisconsin, punched in the face multiple times by a union activist, big liberal. The state police out there in Illinois would not enforce the law and not. So what you see nationwide right now, and Chris Christie is a great guy to listen to on this. Personally, I would not vote for him. Well, I would vote for him if he was the GOP choice, okay? But the thing that he gets through, and I think he's been on the target end of this thing before, is prosecutorial discretion. The accused is guilty, basically, okay? So if someone wants to get you on something, a prosecuting attorney with a vendetta is going to get you on something. So these poor people, unfortunately, down there in Texas, I got bad news for those folks down there. They have been the prosecuting attorney has been able to garner enough evidence against you. It may be real evidence, it may be contrived evidence, it may be a stinted viewpoint, he may be ignoring, exonerating evidence, but he was able to get a grand jury on a one-sided case, which is basically what a grand jury is, okay, with no judge in the room, 50% of those people to say guilty. Okay, once he did that, he can now bring it to trial. And she, in this case, is going to bring it to trial. And they are going to make an example. I predicted this. The minute that story broke, I predicted that there's no way you can wind back the tape or alter the tape. And so what they do is they will make an example out of the people who did this. And they will prosecute whatever little laws they can find that these people may have violated, may or may not have, and they will make an example out of them so that you and me will never do what they did again. And basically, it's just another way that the government has of stifling free thinkers. You can shoot them and kill them, which they just did out in Oregon now. Okay, that's the ultimate recourse. But along the way, if you find some that are difficult and sticky, like these two reporters that they just basically did this great service exposing Planned Parenthood, which is basically committing genocide inside of our society in the inner cities of the United States of America right now. What percentage of black babies are being murdered in the inner cities of America right now? And they're getting off scot-free. But the people who exposed it because it goes against the liberal agenda, those folks, like, it's the same thing with James O'Keefe and Dinesh D'Souza. These people are being punished because they dare. Don't you dare to expose the liberals for what they are, because if you do, this is what's coming to you. And that's the message that these people are trying to get out in Texas. And to some extent, Mac, I mean, I don't know what you think about it, but I think it's pretty effective. I mean, if I was a young person in my 20s, I wouldn't do what we do. Forget it, man. I'd shut up and color. That's basically what they're telling these people, is shut up and color, and most people do it. They don't want to suffer consequences.
So, I definitely agree with you with prosecutorial discretion. I think that is one of the tools of tyranny, in my opinion, because, law is supposed to be black and white. It's supposed to be blind. We have the scales with the lady with her eyes blindfolded. Justice is supposed to be blind, but yet when prosecutors get to decide whether or not they're going to enforce the law, and when they are or when they aren't, that I think that is problematic. And for me, it always reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. This is General W.L. Creech, former commander of Tactical Air Command. He was talking about accountability and being a leader. He said, "Leaders lead by example, and they set the tone. Above all, they do not countenance selective enforcement of standards. I know of no more ruinous path than the selective enforcement of rules and standards. Excellent leaders have very high standards, and they enforce them without fear or favor." And in the fact that we are seeing conservatives or free thinkers being targeted, investigative journalists who are trying to expose illegal activity being targeted, it does, and I agree, it has a chilling effect when it comes to free speech and freedom of thought. People trying to do the same thing. I completely agree. It does prevent and stifle people from entering this, because if you have something on your record, like for example me, I now have an arrest record. I'm still in the process of fighting all of this crap. This has been since 2013 when I was arrested. This has been for a long time. I've been fighting this stuff, and again, the punishment, I say this all the time, the punishment is in the process. It doesn't matter if they find you guilty. It doesn't matter if they actually win in the end. Even if they think that they're going to lose, by putting you through this process of going to the courts, having to take time off of work, spending money for a lawyer, money to just be in the courtroom, that you have to actually drive, pay for the gas, pay for the parking to go there. Then additionally, having this on your record of being, not only for me in my case, the first trial, convicted, but then secondly, even if you aren't convicted, you have an arrest record. And with my situation, I was arrested with a gun. So now, anytime I have an interaction with law enforcement and they look me up on their computer, they're going to see that this guy was arrested for a gun crime or something along those lines. They're going to treat me differently. They're going to their conduct, the way that they treat me, is going to be different. The punishment is in the process. It doesn't matter if they lock you in a jail cell. The point is to drag you through the ringer, sling your name through mud, and unfortunately, it does have a chilling effect. That's why I'm a big opponent of prosecutorial discretion. I can't stand the fact that prosecutors can sit here and decide whether or not they're going to enforce a law on the books. That's not their job. Their job is to enforce the law, not to decide if a law needs to be enforced, unless we're talking about for constitutional reasons and they're upholding their oath.
I think you're 100% correct. I'm not really sure what the answer to it is, because you can't prosecute every crime every time, or I don't know how you do that, if that's possible to do that. But the prosecutor should not be able to use his office to push any particular agenda. And it certainly is in the United States. It's much better in the United States than it was in, say, the 1600s, 1700s in England, when William Penn ran up against the English judges, and he was being prosecuted for practicing his religion, okay? And the judge, basically, in the case of William Penn, said to the jury, you're going to find him guilty, or you're all going to find yourself without jobs. I mean, that's dumbing it down and getting the short version of history. But every one of those jurors said, you know what, we're not going to do it. And they all went to jail with William Penn for his Quaker beliefs. And they finally had to. Eventually, they reformed the judicial system. It was a slow process, but our concepts of justice come out of that. But I think that the American justice system, and I don't know enough about the history of the United States to know how the judicial branch emerged and how the court system was set up here in the United States, but it was probably, I would say, of all the branches of government, it was probably the most infantile, and that it still needs to be worked on and perfected and corruption exposed. We need to have some sort of organization inside the United States that can check up on prosecuting attorneys, an independent, elected organization inside the United States that can check up on the prosecutors so that they know, sort of like an inspector general of prosecutors, so that we know that the prosecutors are clean. Because I can tell you that in very surreptitious ways, all across our country right now, the prosecutors are saluting to the Department of Justice and the powers that be right now, and that should not be. Chris Christie, you listen to him in any of these debates, Mac, if you just focus in on his speech. Most people tune it out when Christie comes on, but the only thing he's talking about is making sure, exactly what Cruz said, I believe you said the name of the general was, or the commander was, that he said that, it has to be selective enforcement is what just chops the knees out. It erodes the foundations of a society because people feel that their efforts, no matter what they do, are no longer going to count for anything because they're going to be looked at as a criminal because some prosecutor someplace decided that they were going to push a crime against them. And the minute that you say you're going to that somebody's committed a crime, it doesn't matter whether they're found guilty or not. You're guilty as pressed. And, you can be exonerated, but or usually you'll have the charge dropped, at some point, but you've still been accused. And it's almost as bad as being as bad as found guilty, So we really do need to find a way inside of our society to reform look at these guys out here in Oregon, out there in Burns. I forget, you mentioned, was it Leviticum is the guy's name? I think you mentioned earlier. He was shot and killed out here.
LaVoy Finicum.
This poor guy, I mean, why are they choosing back this one law? Maybe you feel differently about this. We haven't discussed it, okay? Why are they choosing to clamp down on these guys inside of this national park? It's in the square of land out in the middle of frigging nowhere. I don't even have to say frigging on your show. Frigging nowhere in Oregon. Nobody really cares. I respect their way of making of civil disobedience and sort of sitting on this property. Who cares? The national government does not have anything else to spend their money on except for harassing these few guys that are sitting out there on this square of property, and they were going to harass these guys. I don't care whether that guy drew first or not. To me, it's inconsequential. Okay, it's important to the discussion, okay, but it's not really getting at the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter is that what brought them to that highway in the middle of the snow where a bloody body ends up lying on the side of the road because an FBI agent blew this guy away. What brought us to that point, and what brought us to that point is someone processing a political vendetta against these guys who did not want their idea to spread. And their idea is that, hey, we're going to stand up to unconstitutional government, and we're going to do it through civil disobedience. We're going to sit down on this piece of property right here, right now. And the federal government would not allow it. They would not allow any. And our governor, Kate Brown, called up the FBI and said, hey, come kill this guy. I can right now, come kill one of them as an example. I don't care what you do or how you do it. I want these people out of there. That's our governor. That blood is on the governor of the state of Oregon's hands. She is the one who called the FBI to call these guys, to get these guys harassed so that they actually were pulled over. Okay, and those cops would have continued to monitor them and continue to harass them until they got the reaction that they wanted. That's exactly what we're talking about here. That's prosecutorial discretion. Those guys could have just been left alone. It's like, let them freeze out there on that square property. But no, the federal government was not going to allow that. I don't know how you feel about it, Mac, but that's the way I feel about what happened out there.
So I'll get to the LaVoy in 1 second. I want to talk about prosecutorial discretion. You said, what is a solution? And I will talk about LaVoy in 1 second, but I think that the solution, and what you said, I can understand why you would want to turn to government. You were saying that maybe we need to create some kind of a review panel for prosecutors and things along those lines. My opinion when it comes to this is that it's probably not going to be effective to get the government to monitor the government, because again, who's going to monitor the people doing the monitoring? This is it. We're just creating more bureaucracy that can be taken over by the left. These kind of things are exactly what the left loves. They love more bureaucracy, and eventually, if we're talking about a liberal society or a liberal area, these kind of boards can be taken over just the same as the positions of prosecutor itself. So I don't think that turning to the government is going to be a solution there. For me, I think this is the battle to be won now is the battle for the mind, the battle for philosophy, getting people to understand that, first of all, these systems, they depend on two things. First of all, they depend on you never to speak up and fight. They depend on everyone who ever got a ticket to not fight that in court. Every time that you've been in trouble with the law, they depend on you to make a deal. They depend on you to not fight it to the fullest extent of your ability. They depend on that. Otherwise, the racket, this is a money-making racket. It's a way to fleece money off of the population. In order for that system to be profitable, you have to capitulate and just say, okay, I give up. I'll do what you want. It's not worth the $50 for the ticket or the $120 for the speeding ticket or whatever it is. It's not worth it. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my energy. I'll just accept a deal because I'm afraid, because they're throwing the freaking book at me. They're coming up with fabricating all these different charges. Like with my circumstance, they arrested me for trespassing on a public sidewalk. On a public sidewalk. I got a video of it, which they withheld for over a year, even though they had access to it 3 hours after I was arrested. This is the most ridiculous part about it, is that they will try to scare people into making deals, because this system has to be able to get you to give up. So if people don't give up and you fight them, the system is unsustainable. The second thing is the system is built upon you. They need you to decide that somebody's guilty. We have juries that are the requirement, and all it takes is one person out of 12. That's a 3% solution. I think is the maybe it's another number. I'm terrible at math, but anyway. But there's a solution out there. There's a percentage of how many people 1 in 12 is. Dan, help me out here if you know what that is. But we got some horrible math on the show here. So the point is that if only one person on a jury says that I'm not going to vote that guy guilty, if there was no crime that produced a victim, if this person is being prosecuted in a way that is, they're just being targeted for their viewpoints, the jury system is a check and a balance against the judicial system. It truly is. It's our way. It's a check and a balance for the people to interrupt the government tyranny that's going on with them using prosecutorial discretion and basically turning the law into a weapon. That I think is a solution. You bring it down to the lowest level. You win the battle for the minds, and we don't have to convert everybody to do that. We just have to convert a small percentage of the population to actually fight this stuff, from one, within the courtrooms, and two, actually not capitulate as a jury, and feel pressure from your fellow jury members to say somebody was guilty, even though you disagree with the law that the person's being tried on. You, as a jurist, you have a moral obligation to not only decide whether or not the person is guilty, but decide whether or not the law is legitimate. This is called jury nullification. You can do this. They can't force you to say somebody's guilty. So I think that's what we have to do as far as a solution. But again, it's easier for us to relinquish that responsibility to the government. Let's make sure that the prosecutors are the ones doing the job, instead of halting them and stopping them at every step of the way. Now regarding LaVoy, I was already planning on talking about this, so I appreciate you mentioning this, Dan. First of all, I completely support the guys that are out there and that have been out in Burns, Oregon. Their right to be there, their right to be armed. I tend to try to avoid, especially people that stand for the same things, I try to avoid criticizing them, because we're on the same team. I don't necessarily agree with their strategy as far as being armed, and this is coming from a guy with guns. I support guns. I'm very, very pro-gun. I support their right to occupy. I even support their right to occupy this building with firearms. I just think that the fact that they have firearms out there or had firearms and everybody knew that they were all armed, it puts it in a situation where their tactics took away from the message that they're trying to push out there, which is the federal government encroaching on this land, which is, I believe in their cause. I support the cause. The issue that I have is that if these guys weren't armed, all right, and I completely agree that they had a right to do it, but if they were never armed and they didn't have weapons with them at this time, there would be no question as to the conduct of the officers shooting them, because I've looked over the video and you can see LaVoy. He has his hand up and then his hands go down, to his I think it's his left side, and I don't know why the hands go down to the left side, but then he drops. So I don't know if he was shot. I've heard some witness accounts saying that he was shot in the leg potentially, and that would be why he dropped to that side. That would make sense. Or maybe he was reaching for a gun. I don't know. The point is, though, is that the evidence that we have on either sides of that coin, the shooting of LaVoy, I can't tell you without a shadow of a doubt who was wrong in that scenario. But I can tell you that if these guys were peaceful protesters, which they were, but they were unarmed, everybody would be in support of LaVoy, and be calling out these police officers for shooting an unarmed guy. Everybody would know that this is wrong. This is wrong behavior. Where I can say, and I still support these guys. Where I can't say that I blame the federal government, the FBI, is they are the ones that initiated this situation. I agree with you, Dan. They had no business to even harass these guys. They set these guys up. This was a setup, and I truly do believe that this was an ambush meant to make an example out of these people and use force, because that's the only thing the government understands is force. And this is why, I support open carry. I support you carrying your gun however you want to carry. But if you're going to go up against your government and you're going to actually participate in civil disobedience, I think that the way that you do it is by taking a page out of Dr. Martin Luther King and Gandhi's handbook and doing it unarmed and putting yourself in a position to where the government, the government's going to use force. They're going to use force because that's all they understand. That's the only way they know how to respond. So if they're going to use force, you want to put yourself in the best situation possible, because then you know that if they do shoot you, there's no question.
Part of what they're not to interrupt you,
Go
Mac,
for it,
but
man.
I hear you. But the difference between these folks is, what you've got is Gandhi with a gun. That's really what these people are, Gandhi with a gun. But the problem is your protest is not effective if you're not carrying a gun, because part of what these guys are protesting is federal overreach in all areas, including into the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. And so what we're saying at the beginning of the show, which is, that natural law allows those guys to carry a gun like any other object, okay? The gun in itself is not bad in any way, okay? It's just a tool for people to use. And so people need to put that on the awareness of the American people that, hey, I can have a gun in my pocket or a rifle over my shoulder, and I can walk around on this federal piece of property, and you can't stop me. I'm just a peaceable person, just here for anything. And they were hurting no one by being there. And indeed, the federal authorities, by being there, were hurting other people, because as you and I both know, there are violent crimes going on all over the United States of America, in places like Ferguson and Baltimore and all in Northeast Portland right now as we speak. And those same resources, you have got 5 pounds of flour. You've got to fill up a 10-pound bag. Where are you going to put the 5 pounds of flour? You've got limited resources. You're going to have to apply them. Or let's say you have $10 and $20 worth of problems, and you have to put $1 on each problem. Okay, which ones are you going to pick? Okay, to go ahead and enforce. Which ones are you going to apply the limited resources to? Because you always have limited resources against an infinite resource problem. And what they chose to do was have these federal officers go to rural Oregon, surround these people, infiltrate them, listen to their conversations, harass them until they got a reaction that they liked out of the situation. And they probably, I'm not quite sure they bargain for that guy going for his gun? Maybe. Okay. That he was one of the more dangerous folks in the chatter. Okay. But they shouldn't have been spying on these people and out there harassing them anyway. Just leave them be.
Yeah.
But what happened was you had a governor, a liberal governor calling a liberal administration in Washington. I can guarantee you that those conversations took place are not in any kind of electronic communication anywhere, and that they wanted those guys to come out here and they wanted those guys gone because it does not fit the liberal agenda out here in the state of Oregon. And it ended up, unfortunately, with the father of, I guess, 11 kids dead in the snow, bleeding. And for the FBI to try and paint lipstick on that pig, you know, and for that guy to stand up there in front of the cameras and say this was the best outcome for this thing, and you know, consequences have their actions, I think it's embarrassing for the FBI, to be quite honest with you. I was embarrassed to listen to that guy, to be quite honest with you. And I'm a big supporter of law enforcement, but if he believes what he's saying, you know, that guy should be fired. That's just wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah, I think that the entire operation, the fact that they set up the confrontation, you know, they're the ones at fault here. The reason why, you know, assault teams and FBI like raid teams, they go in so fast and hard is they want to prevent, you know, any kind of violence. They want to overwhelm the opponent. So this situation, they set it up for a conflict. They didn't come with the overwhelming force. They put it out to where it was essentially, for lack of a better word, a Mexican standoff where they're sitting there waiting for them to decide what happens. And apparently, you know, there's witness accounts saying that the FBI shot first, and that's why they sped off in the car at first. And then they go around a blind turn, and there's suddenly a roadblock right in front of them. And they veer off into the bank, hit the snow, and the guy comes out of the car with his hands up, LaVoy, and some people are saying that he went for a gun and was shot. Some people are saying that he was shot in the leg, and that's potentially why. Or there's a lot of other theories around what happened. My point here, and believe me, I support these guys. I understand what they're doing, and I support their reasonings for doing it. My whole argument here is not that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, because I think they have every right to do it. My argument is that you have a government that only knows how to respond to dissent, to civil disobedience in one way, and that way is through a monopoly on force. And when you have guns too, we already know that the mainstream media is very liberal in the modern sense of the word, not the classical sense, very leftist and statist, and they pray at the altar of the government, and they demonize weapons. So the fact that you have a gun, you're already going to be demonized. Believe me, I know that firsthand from my experience of being arrested. You could just be simply walking down a sidewalk with a firearm, minding your own business, and be demonized for having a gun. And people saying on your YouTube video that, you know, if they were there, they would have shot you. You know, like things along those lines.
Unbelievable.
Look through my comments on YouTube. You will be blown away at the statists on there that say that they would have killed me just for asserting my rights and being peaceful. So the point is that it's a tactical decision, and I understand there's a lot of crap going on, and we can sit here and talk. I can talk about anything with you, and as far as what is unjust and how things are working and how we're not respecting individual rights. But I think if we're going to fight this government, if we're actually, and I mean ideologically, if we're going to win the battle for the minds, we have to control, like Sun Tzu, the art of war, we have to control the reaction. We know that the government, they only have one tool, and it's a hammer. So to them, everything's a nail. All they're going to do is hit that nail. That's all they know how to do. So what we do is we control the environment. We control how they hit that nail. We make it, when they hit the nail, we make it look really, really bad on them, because it is. But we make sure that we are above reproach, because we have to make sure, because we don't have anybody on our side. We have to win the minds of the people, and that's what Dr. Martin Luther King did. He was unarmed, marching people, getting beaten and sprayed with water hoses, you know, attacked by dogs, and this was going on for a long time, and nobody cared. It didn't change any momentum, but suddenly news started covering these people getting beaten and attacked by the Democrat sheriffs in the South, by the way, and it started coming into your home, and you saw this for the first time. You actually saw the violence inflicted on these people for simply having the gall or the audacity to walk down the street and assert what is a right, a freedom of movement, a freedom to assemble, and to talk about tragedies that is being inflicted upon them by their own government. You know, that is what changed the hearts and minds of people. And I think if we're going to actually win the battle of the minds, we have to really, really be above reproach. We got to make sure that we are controlling the environment to where we cannot be pointed to as the bad guy, because there will be fingers pointed at us even at the slightest hint of any wrongdoing on our side. And if we don't have the information, if we don't have the proof, the evidence, in this case with LaVoy, they actually they planned the intersection where they blocked the road into either a dead zone of cell phone coverage, or they had some kind of device that prevented people from using their cell phones, because all the witness testimonies I'm listening to, their cell phones weren't able to send any outbound traffic or receive anything. And that's scary, because the video, some of these people, they were taking video on their cell phones. As soon as they were stopped with police behind them, they started taking cell phone videos, which is great. That's a great tactic. Get the video, get it out there. The problem is, though, is that we don't have any way of sending the information to the internet and auto streaming, and these people, they had their video and their phone confiscated. Just like what happened to me, they kept the video for over a year. So we have to control the environment. We have to. If they weren't armed, and again, they had a right to be armed. I'm not arguing it. I'm not saying they shouldn't have done anything. I'm saying that tactically, strategically, if we're going to put ourselves in a confrontation with the federal government, who will kill you just as much as look at you, if we're going to do this, we got to do it right, and we got to make sure that we're taking all the precautions that our side doesn't get demonized, because we got people that want to demonize us.
Yeah, you got to take the high road, Mac. I think it's what you're saying is, people have to, you have to be the bigger person. And, Gandhi was before MLK, and these people just sat down. And when the newspaper reports came back to England about the British soldiers on horseback with bayonets, stabbing these people and killing them in mass, he won the war of public opinion, and that's really what you have to win. It's like InfoWars, right? You have to somehow win the court of public opinion, and for a time, Occupy was able to do that. I have to, I got to give the hat tip to them, because they really were able to. They really were able to convince a large portion of the American public that this was a good thing. Okay, and I mean, we all knew that it was a bad thing, but people thought it was a good thing. And so winning, you not only have to win the battle, you not only have to be right, but you have to win the hearts and minds as well. And if you don't do that, well, you've lost your cause. And in the process, you've lost your life. So if you lose your life and you lose the cause, I'm not sure, what the win is here. But it does draw attention to the problem, I guess. It's it's the ultimate sacrifice, but it draws attention to the problem. That this is a federal government that's run amok. That is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. And if there's no outrage here, Mac, if there's no outrage for this one guy, my biggest fear is that this just gets bigger. Okay, that the next one is just bigger, and it continues to grow. That the liberals, I haven't heard one word in liberal media. I went to this town hall the other day. Wouldn't you think they'd mention this guy? We just had somebody murdered by federal agents, here in the state of Oregon. Not even a mention of it. Nobody even mentions this guy. It's done. It's gone. And so people need to talk about it, and people need to analyze what really happened here. Who was really right at a macro level, and who was really wrong at a macro level? Who was really right at a micro level, and who was really wrong at a micro level here? And I would say at a micro level, if the guy reached for his gun, he was wrong. At a macro level, it was wrong for the federal government to ever put him in that situation to why couldn't we, and you brought this to my head, why couldn't these people have shown up at their meeting, parked the truck, and then all of a sudden from all around them, undercover agents, okay, who were chopping wood or whatever they were doing, working on a car or whatever, they all of a sudden pop out with ARs, and they all do the drop on the truck, right? And they're all pointing ARs right at the truck, right? Everybody in there. Nobody moved. Nobody's going for anything, okay? Overwhelming force. Those guys are done, but instead we're trying to pull them over on some remote road someplace with, I don't know how many agents they had, but, it just seemed like it was this, why did we end up in that situation to begin with anyway? That's the most professional job that law enforcement could do with these guys.
Yeah,
it's just
unbelievable. If you're talking about overwhelming force, it is common knowledge that we do this with terrorists, we do this in our military, we do this with the FBI. They toss in a flashbang and then overwhelm the room very quickly, and before anybody can even react. And 9 times out of 10, people are sitting there dumbfounded, too afraid to even move. So if you wanted to actually take these guys and prevent the loss of life, that would be how you do it. I don't think that's even necessary, because these guys aren't hurting anyone. Let them be. Let them do whatever they want to do, as long as they're not hurting others or taking their stuff. But in this circumstance, even if you did want to actually take the guys, if you wanted to apprehend them, there are ways that you can go about it to ensure that you can pretty much control that there will be no loss of life, or at least if there is, it's going to be on them because they reacted a certain way. Now, there's better ways to go about it, and the overwhelming force that I was talking about, like SWAT teams, how they operate, this is common knowledge in law enforcement, and we all know, every single one of us in society knows that one of the most dangerous moments for a police officer is a traffic stop. Why would they do it that way is beyond belief, and it just seems to me it's evident that they wanted a confrontation to come to blows. They set it up. They controlled the environment. They set it up for a confrontation where they knew they weren't going to have cell phone coverage. They knew the only video that would be put out to the media was a drone footage that they had that doesn't have any audio. We can't hear what's going on. We're hundreds and hundreds of feet away in the sky. We can't see everything crystal clear. We don't know what is happening.
Where are the dash cams? Did they have dash cams?
It won't even matter. I was looking at the footage. It won't even matter because the dash cams, even if they were on, they would be pointing another direction entirely from where LaVoy was shot. So it won't even matter.
And those FBI agents aren't going to have personal cameras. I mean, what do they cost? $200
exactly.
Online, right? That you clip on your, you just clip it into your pocket, right? It's a motion control.
All of
this automatically records, right?
If you were going to set this situation up and you wanted to take every precaution to make sure that you were in the right as a government official, as somebody conducting a strike, you'd want to try to make sure that you prevent a conflict. You do it in the best scenario possible. You catch them when they're the least expecting it, and you overwhelm them with force. And then the second thing that you would do is you have cameras showing, because cameras don't lie. You have cameras showing every aspect, every angle of the takedown, and that way you can back it up. The fact that they don't have any of this, and the only thing that they're releasing is a drone footage way up in the sky that it constantly has trees that are going in front of it, and we don't have any audio with it. The fact that they're doing this, I don't trust them. I do not trust the government in this situation.
Oh, no, I don't trust them. No, if they had footage that exonerated them, you can be damn sure that we've seen that by now. That clearly showed him pulling a piece out of his pocket, in an unobstructed view from a first person shooter point of view or something like that. You would definitely see that. But if it exists, we won't see it, or it'll be some years they will classify that.
Yeah,
and we won't see that stuff. But it's interesting, Mac. I wonder if anybody in your listening audience, and I know you're XLE, but if there are other XLEs in your audience that are listening to the podcast now live or listening to it when it's taped, they could chime in on one of your timelines on Facebook or someplace and talk to us about an analysis of the crime scene and how it would be a great problem for class, right? For a law enforcement class in place to analyze this and how things should have been done differently. It sounds like it's not too hard to analyze the problem and come up with something a little better than a traffic stop where a guy gets blown away.
Yeah, as I said, it is common knowledge. Even people who aren't law enforcement know that that's the most dangerous position to be as a law enforcement officer, to go and do a traffic stop. You never know what temperament the person you're stopping is going to be. You don't control the environment totally. It's a situation that can get out of hand very quickly, and that's the way that they choose to take down these supposedly armed and dangerous people. And I'm using air quotes here. Look, this is a circumstance that was set up for a violent confrontation, and I don't believe that they didn't want to take them down with physical violence. I think wanted to make an example out of him and scare the hell out of anyone that was involved, and hoped that taking down the leaders of this movement would make sure everybody would disperse out of there. But guess what, gang? They're still there. They're not leaving. And in fact, a lot of them are scared to leave, because if they leave, they could get killed on the road, just like LaVoy. He was on the way into town to go meet with the sheriff. You know, it's unbelievable that this is happening right now. And again, though I disagree with the strategy behind it, I would prefer a more focused and a more Martin Luther King-esque way of doing this. I completely support them. They have.
What if you were concealed carry, Mac? I mean, you know, these guys. I know veterans who conceal carry back pocket. Back right. Where their wallet goes. Mm-hmm. And so did the cop think, well, if he was going for his wallet, would he shot him then? I think you're right. I think that he set these guys up and they put them in a situation where they would be sort of forced into something like this, and I just think that's sad. It's a sad day for America. First, I was angry, and I'm sad. There's probably like the 7 phases of the
grief,
crisis,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I go through different phases of anger and sadness about this, and in no way can I come up with justified. There's no way. I listen to the guy from the FBI. And I try, people who are listening out there. I try to come up with justified when I listen to that. Maybe somebody like Lars or somebody like that can say, hey, you know what? You've been running around with a gun like that. You reach for your pocket when the cops pull you over. Well, you deserve to die. I don't know. I honestly don't believe that there could have been a better outcome in this circumstance. Somehow, how do we end up here? And it's not the place where we want to be. And what have we learned here? And I'm afraid that it's just going to be pushed under the carpet, except for it's going to have a stifling effect on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, that sort of thing.
So as far as, and I understand, you're talking about what if they conceal carry, and I know so many people who listen to the show. You don't leave the house without a gun. I get it. It's like it's like putting on your shirt. It's you have a gun on you at all times, and I understand it and I get it. But again, if I'm going out to go into an act of civil disobedience, you have to understand that you are, in fact, putting your life on the line, and you have to be prepared to pay the consequences. And, one of those consequences could be your life. Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, he wasn't concerned about his life. He figured that, if somebody wanted to kill him, they could kill him, and that his cause was more important than one man's life. And in the case of this situation, let's say something not to do, because the open carry protest, I'm specifically talking about gun rights, okay? So that makes sense that I have a gun there, and it's a specific argument. If I'm talking about land rights and I'm doing an Occupy movement, for me, I would be unarmed. Now, I think that everyone has a right to do what they want to do. You can choose to be armed, but I think that you got to make sure that there's no way that they can even say that you were going for a gun, and if you don't have a gun on you.
What about the bears, Mac? What about the bears? You're out in the middle of the woods. You're not going to have your 357 to blow the bear away.
And I'm not arguing with that. I think they have every right to do that. But my point is that there's a difference between being willing to die for your beliefs and being willing to kill for your beliefs. And I think if we're going to make these stands against the government, we have to be willing to die for our beliefs, because they're not going to hesitate to kill us.
Well, I would agree with you there. You have to be ready to pay the ultimate sacrifice. But it's an old Greek saying, and it's not a Bible saying, God helps those who help themselves. And he gave us a brain for a reason, okay? And I can tell you right now that there's been friends of mine that have been said, hey, don't go to that protest without a vest on. And they've shown me vests and how inexpensively you can get them now. I don't know if I'm going to go out to these events anymore without a vest.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Accidental, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's accidental, why the hell wasn't that guy wearing a vest?
I heard he got shot in the face. I heard that LaVoy got shot in the face.
Oh, man. That is just terrible.
Yeah.
It's just terrible, man. It just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
The FBI is just going to look at this. Is not a shining. Are you an FBI agent? Are you listening to Mack Show? This is not a shining moment for federal law enforcement right now, I'm afraid. They're not 100% right. These protesters are not 100% right, but boy, you guys sure aren't 100% right in doing what you're doing. And at some point, Mac, right, if you're a law enforcement, if you're rank and file, you have to say to yourself, okay, someone's ordering me to do this and I got to feed my family. But you know what? I'm going to go be a mall cop because I just cannot do this. You know, I mean, I can't see that these people are committing any huge crime. I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. I feel the people above me are using selective enforcement to target these people and to artificially control their freedom of expression. And so I'm not going to do this job anymore. And at some point, if you're a cop, and I know that they go through this, and cops have to say to themselves, you know what? I don't believe in what I'm doing. I don't believe I'm upholding my oath anymore, and I'm not gonna do this anymore. I would not want to be a cop because it's a very difficult time to be in law enforcement. That's what I would say. I respect police officers a lot, but man, you've got to do some things sometimes that you really do not agree with. You know, salute smartly and go in and get those guys. I just disagree with that entire action. You know, I would have nothing to do with that. I would say, hey, you know what, demote me, but I'm stepping out of this. So I step out of missions all the time. From a citizen journalist point of view, there are certain things, there are certain times when I just can't do the job, or I disagree with it. Right? If someone asks me to do something unlawful, Mac, right, as an undercover journalist, to record something that would violate a recording law someplace, I will not do that. Okay, I will say no. I'm not going to do that. So every person, even police officers, have to have a set of moral and ethical standards that they follow. And I think that these police officers, anybody that was involved in who followed in order to do that, particularly the guy who pulled the trigger, has to say to themselves, you know what? Should I really have been in this particular position on this particular day? You know, and could I have done anything before this time to have put myself in a different position? I don't think he is as culpable as President Obama or Governor Brown, who I think are much more culpable, but they're also participatory in what happened here in rural Oregon, which I think is just it's not a tragedy. A tragedy is just something, it's a hurricane, right? That happens out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. This is, I really don't know, a travesty would probably be a better description of what happened here. It's just a complete abuse of the legal system to punish these people, and this guy paid the ultimate price. I think it's terrible. So real quick, give me a minute on your thoughts of. We'll do a subject change here, palate cleanse. What do you think about this the city of Portland being labeled the most atheist city in America? Well, it's interesting, Mac. It is, in some ways. I mean, it is Armageddon down here. You're talking about the LGBTQ capital of the world, and from the Bible Belt, I'm sure that some of the stuff that goes on down here in terms of gay pride parades and just transvestites and gay clubs and just sort of moral Armageddon from one Christian perspective of the place. So I think that people would probably see that and agree with it. But by the same token, I think by reading that article, people might believe that there are no believers in downtown. And St. Mary's Cathedral is right across the street from me here on Burnside, and I've been there a couple times, and the priests are pretty liberal inside of there, but I think most of the people who go to the Catholic Church believe in God. And also there is sort of the liberal commie God crowd over at the Unitarian Church, which basically they would do, like over at the Unitarian Church here, they would do a gun control rally. They would have rallies for licenses for illegal aliens and that sort of thing. So religion is used by the political left in downtown Portland in order to manipulate the masses. So there are believers in downtown Portland. They're probably not as visible as they are in most of America, and it's more or less used as a means of promoting a particular political ideology, I guess, is what I would want to say about it. All righty. Well, everybody, that was Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant. He's a good friend of mine. If you like my stuff, you'll love his stuff. He's 100% better than me. So check him out. Subscribe to him on YouTube. That's youtube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. Check out his website, daylightdisinfectant.com. Dan, I just want to say thanks so much. I love it when you come on the show, and I had a lot of fun talking to you today. Thanks for having me, Mac. We'll see you offline afterwards. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Take care, Dan. Bye. Alrighty, gang. So we're going to cut to a commercial break, and we have to get to the next segment of the show here. We're way behind schedule, but I was having too much fun talking with Dan to let him go. So anyway, we'll be right back after this break. When we come back, the very first thing I want to do is I want to talk about Ted Cruz on ethanol subsidies, free markets, sanctuary cities, and Obamacare. I got some clips I'm going to play for you guys. So you guys don't want to miss this. This is really awesome stuff. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, gang, we're back. So I have to make a choice here. I got to decide what I'm going to cover because we only got 20 minutes of show left, and I got like 2.5 hours worth of stuff just even in the feature topics, not even including the and much more. So let's see here. We're not going to talk about the Iran giving medals for captured U.S. soldiers. My opinion, let's do that real quick. I am against it. There you go. Compare and contrast the impeachment of President Andrew Johnson. No time for it today. I'm leading with that next week. I don't care. I'm starting with that next week. So, bad omen for January stocks in 2016. We're going to get to that. I want to get to status call for checks and balances on individual liberty. But let me lead here with Ted Cruz on ethanol subsidies. And I think this is important. So, here we go. Here's the clip.
Senator Cruz, change of subject. You've called for an end to the renewable fuel standards, which mandate that refineries blend biofuels, including ethanol, into gasoline. As you well know, ethanol is a big industry in this state, $10 billion a year. Last week, Terry Branstad, the popular governor of Iowa, who is in the hall tonight, said that you're bankrolled by big oil and that Iowa voters would be making a mistake supporting you. Why should those voters side with you over the sixth-term governor of this state, sir?
Well, Chris, I'm glad to discuss my views on ethanol and energy. I think.
Whoa, hold on. Before we actually continue this, I just heard sixth-term governor. What the hell is going on in Iowa? What, they got a dictatorship? We should be talking about that. What's going? What does this guy think he is? FDR? Come on. Anyway, here's Cruz.
God has blessed this country with enormous natural resources, and we should pursue all of the above. We should be developing oil and gas and coal and nuclear and wind and solar and ethanol and biofuels. But I don't believe that Washington should be picking winners and losers, and I think there should be no mandates and no subsidies whatsoever. And indeed, my tax plan that I've introduced, it's available on our website. It's a simple flat tax for everyone. It'll produce enormous economic growth, and it eliminates every mandate, every subsidy, so there's no subsidies for oil and gas, no subsidies for anyone. Now, it is true that there are a bunch of lobbyists and a bunch of Democrats in this state spending millions of dollars trying to convince the people of Iowa that I somehow oppose ethanol. It's not true. I have introduced legislation that would phase out the ethanol mandate over 5 years. But that is in the context of having no mandates whatsoever for anyone. And I would note there's a much more important government regulation to ethanol, and that's the EPA's blend wall that makes it illegal to sell mid-level blends of ethanol and gasoline, I will tear down the EPA's blend wall, which will enable ethanol to expand its market share by up to 60%, all without mandates, all without any government mandates whatsoever through the marketplace. And I'll note finally, Chris, there is a reason that Iowa's Congressman Steve King, perhaps the fiercest defender of farmers in this state, is chairing my campaign, because he understands that I'm committed to a fair and level playing field for every energy source without lobbyists and without Washington picking winners and losers. Senator Ted Cruz.
We got an accident there. Okay, so yeah, woohoo! Ted Cruz. He does not support subsidies. You know, this is important to note. It's not being anti-ethanol to be against subsidies for not just ethanol, but all of them. This is called free market. That's what that is. When you create a subsidy for something, you're obviously, number one, you're going to get something, get more of that thing. So, look, if you want people to use more ethanol, the free market solution is to let people decide that ethanol is the right thing for them. And if it's a good product, people will naturally go to that. But if it's a bad idea, why does it make sense to artificially prop it up? Again, there are some things related to ethanol that should be noted. It takes more energy to produce ethanol than it does actually give you from, driving in your car, that you can get from combusting it. So that's something to be noted, all right? If ethanol was a good tech, people would just invest in it and do it naturally on their own. They wouldn't need you to invest subsidies into it. But this is the government picking winners and losers, and I'm sorry. Look, I get if you're a farmer and you make a lot of money off of ethanol, that's your livelihood. Maybe you just make a little bit of money off of ethanol, and you need those subsidies. Look, what the subsidy is that's taking money from someone else and giving it to you. I mean, that's redistribution of wealth. And look, if you are a conservative, if you're a libertarian, if you're a free market person, if you believe in free markets and you're against redistribution of wealth, then you should, if you're being consistent, be against subsidies in all forms, because it is redistribution of wealth at its core. That's what it is. It's taking money from one group and giving it to somebody else. And if you're a leftist, by the way, if you're a statist, then you can also see the reverberations. There we go. Sorry, I can't speak right now. You can also see the unintended consequences that come with subsidies. Now, one of those things, it's rumored that ethanol is actually poisoning the Gulf because of all the stuff that's chemicals and things like that go into the fertilizers, and all this stuff that's being used in the heartland. It's being essentially washed down into the Gulf of Mexico and poisoning the Gulf, allegedly. I don't know if this is true. It's coming from leftists. I can't trust what they say. But what I will say is that if that is actually happening, that's an unintended consequences resulting from the government picking winners and losers, and this winner is ethanol. So, I mean, it's an argument against the statist left anyway. It's an argument against the government getting involved because there's always some unintended consequence. Again, if ethanol was good and people wanted it, you wouldn't need, in a free market, you would not need the government to subsidize it. Good ideas, they stand on their own. Bad ideas fail. It doesn't make sense for us to prop up bad ideas or pick winners and losers. And if something is actually a good idea, then it shouldn't need a subsidy. So I find something particularly interesting, though. This is Ted Cruz. He was talking about how he's willing to extend the subsidies out for 5 more years and get rid of them then. He's willing to do that. And this is interesting because not too long ago he was saying he was completely against the subsidies, but he realizes there's going to be a lot of pain for people, so he's going to basically have it go out over a period of time, lapse out over a period of time, phase it out. But this is Ted Cruz. This is supposed to be somebody who's not willing to compromise, won't make any deals. What? I don't get it. What's this about? Look, Ted Cruz, he's not a jerk. He understands. He disagrees with the subsidies in philosophy, but he wants to actually get rid of them, and he wants to do it over a period of time so he doesn't hurt people, by cutting out immediately. This is where I stand as well when I'm talking about Social Security. I think we ought to phase it out over a period of time, stop bringing new people into the system. Maybe if the next 5 years or so, everybody who's going to retire from 5 or 10 years from now can still go on Social Security. But after that, we're not taking anybody else. You better have a plan because no one else is getting on Social Security. We're going to phase it out over time and move to private retirement accounts. Something along those lines. Get the government out of it. You're the one who can decide how best to save for your retirement. The government, all they've done is stole your money. And now what they're doing is they're redistributing wealth. They're taking money from the people that are currently working and they're giving it to people that are retired that have already had their money stolen from the government when the government was supposed to safeguard this for the retirement. It doesn't make any sense. The government, you can't trust them. You just can't trust them. So anyway, we got to talk about the polls. I got some more clips for Ted Cruz here. Let's move to Ted Cruz on sanctuary cities. Here he is.
Senator Cruz, some 1,400 people submitted questions on this very hot topic of illegal immigration on Facebook, and a number of them were about the murder of Kate Steinle in San Francisco, allegedly shot down by an illegal. Doug Betancourt sent this question: will you support Kate Steinle's law, which would impose a mandatory 5-year prison term for an illegal who's deported and then returns to this country? And will you defund sanctuary cities for violating federal law?
Chris, absolutely yes. And not only will I support it, I have authored Kate's law in the United States Senate and filed that legislation. I tried to get the Senate to vote to pass Kate's law on the floor of the Senate just 1 week ago, and the leader of our own party blocked a vote on Kate's law. There was reference made to our leaders being stupid. It's not a question of stupidity. It's that they don't want to enforce the immigration laws. That there are far too many in the Washington cartel that support amnesty. President Obama has talked about fundamentally transforming this country. There's 7 billion people across the face of the globe, many of whom want to come to this country. If they come legally, great. But if they come illegally and they get amnesty, that is how we fundamentally change this country. And it really is striking. A majority of the candidates on this stage have supported amnesty. I have never supported amnesty, and I led the fight against Chuck Schumer's Gang of Eight amnesty legislation in the Senate.
All right, so that was Cruz on that. He's tough on amnesty. He wants to pass Kate's law. So, I'm actually not so much a fan of imprisoning immigrants, illegal immigrants. I think that we should just get them out of the country. We should deport them. They're not our problem. I think we should turn them over to authorities. If they committed a crime or something, okay, yeah, imprison them. But if they've just been deported, now they're back, let's keep deporting them, and then let's also make it so they can't get a job here. That way they'll self-deport. But I digress. Let's go ahead, and I want to talk about the polls here in Iowa, since Iowa's tomorrow. A lot of stuff on the horizon here. We got in Iowa right now, according to one of the latest polls, this is a Des Moines Register poll that was just released. This is a 538.com article by Harry Enton. The article says that showing Trump leading the Republican field in Iowa, but with 28%, Ted Cruz with 23%, and Marco Rubio with 15%. On the other side, Hillary Clinton was ahead of Bernie Sanders, 45 to 42%. Wow, that is a close race. That's something that's pretty crazy. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the stuff I've seen here with Hillary on this. We've got Hillary, a former IG, it's Inspector General, was saying that this was all planned. The State Department, this is an article, by the way, on nypost.com, written by Paul Spurry, dated January 31st, 2016. The State Department is lying when it says it didn't know it was too late that Hillary Clinton was improperly using personal emails and private server using emails in a private server to conduct official business, because it never set up an agency email address for her in the first place. The department's former top watchdog says this was all planned in advance to skirt rules governing federal records management, said Howard J. Krongard, who served as the agency's inspector general from 2005 to 2008. The Harvard-educated lawyer points out that from day one, Clinton was never assigned and never used a state.gov email address like previous other secretaries. That's a change in the standard. It tells me that this was premeditated, and this eliminates claims by the State Department that they were unaware of her private email server until later. So I got that story. That's a problem for Hillary. That could be some of the reasons why she's having trouble in the polls. But got another thing here. On Iowa campus, Clinton is a tough sell among young voters. Article written on news.yahoo.com. Gregor Washchinsky. Let's see. Wearing a Bernie Sanders stickers on his T-shirt, an arm with a stack of pamphlets, the 24-year-old openly seeks out First Lady's supporters to cast doubt on the choices of Democrat presidential nominee. This is a list of fact-check statements that Hillary Clinton has made and that I disagree with. So she's passing stuff out. And, honestly, I can understand why young women, especially, would have an issue with Hillary Clinton, especially considering Hillary said she stood beside Bill Clinton this whole time. She claims to be for women's rights and, women's... one of the things she said is that women who claim that they were raped, they should be believed. Whether or not there's any evidence surrounding it, they should just be believed for any accusation whatsoever, even if they have no evidence. However, she didn't believe the women that have and continue to claim that her husband raped them. She didn't believe them. So, again, Hillary not really standing for women's rights, and I can understand why women don't want to back her on that, especially young women. Now, an important poll that came out that I think we need to talk about. This is on politics.usa.today. usatoday.com by Catalina Camilla. This is March 10th, 2015. So this is kind of an older one, but a poll. I mean, it's pretty important. I would say it gives you the idea or the kind of the temperature of the culture. So it says poll, nearly 60% of voters want change in 2016. So nearly 6 in 10 voters are eager for change in the 2016 presidential election, which could pose a challenge for Jeb Bush and Hillary Rodham Clinton. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to find some of these. Even at this early stage in the 2016 race, the cry for change doesn't bode well for Bush and Clinton, the two candidates with strong ties to previous presidential administrations. 6 in 10 voters say Bush and former Florida governor and the son of both presidents represent a return to policies of the past. That includes 42% of Republicans. So this NBC News Wall Street Journal poll released Monday night, this was back in March, showed 59% of registered voters believes it was important to find a candidate who will bring greater change in current policies, even if that person is less experienced and tested. So I think this is going to apply to Hillary significantly. People are still clamoring for hope and change, hope and change. Their guy is still in office. They've already got the hope and change that they were promised, and it's not been good. It's not been what they want. So now they want more change. They got to have more change. Again, it wasn't described what they were getting, what change they were getting before, but now they want more. They don't care about experience. They want more change. And this is even on the Democrat side. This is why I think there's a growing movement, a growing threat, in my opinion, with Bernie Sanders as the nominee for the Democrat side. Now, I can see, I would actually like to see Bernie and Ted Cruz go up against each other. And I think that would open the door for a Bloomberg to come in there. He's already threatened to run as an independent. If he does, that's good for the Republican Party. I had a thought today, though. What would it be like in a race where Ted Cruz on the Republican side gets a nomination, Bernie Sanders on the Democrat side gets a nomination, Michael Bloomberg running as an independent, and Donald Trump throwing his hat in the ring as an independent as well? What would happen? That would be a crazy race, and I can't even tell you. But I can tell you, if Michael Bloomberg is in the race and it's just him, he's funding his own campaign, he's pledged to put $1 billion into his campaign if he decides to run. He thinks he's going to slide in the middle and steal both votes from both sides because, in his opinion, these people running for both the Democrat and the Republican side, Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders, are on the fringe. So he thinks he's going to be able to run as a moderate. It's not going to work. All he's going to do is take votes away from the Democrat. Republicans know this is the same Michael Bloomberg that wants your guns. This is the guy that wants to take salt out of restaurants and tell you how big of a big gulp drink you can buy. This guy is not. He's not moderate in any form or other. So anyway, let's see here. We've got just 4 minutes left in the show. As you can tell, I'm kind of running through this bad January omen here for the stock market. Basically, historically speaking, when there's bad month in the month of January, a bad stock month, historically speaking, sometimes more so than other, the majority of the years, the rest of the year is bad. That's one of the articles that I have here. I'm not even going to bother reading this because I don't have time. But obviously, yeah, the whole system's coming down. We're going to talk more about this next episode. Gang, I hope that you are still prepping. Accelerate your preps. Buy your food. Get gold, ammo, guns, silver, all the stuff. I mean, get it. Get it now while you can. I really don't think there's much time left on this. Okay, so the last topic here, Statists calling for checks. And, I don't even have time. Don't have time. I'm going to leave with this next show. I'm sorry, gang. I wish I had time to get to this. I want to say, when we're talking to our friends and when we're pressed against the wall on an issue, one of the things that, first of all, I love our group, On the Move on Facebook. It's Facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. I love that because I can talk with you guys. We have conversations about different solutions. I try to bring questions that'll challenge you guys, and a lot of times I want you guys to challenge me. We had conversations about education and how I think that's a big battle that we've lost. And I asked, is there any way that we could have like some kind of mandate to where the government wouldn't take it over, it would still be effective, and we could actually teach Constitution and founder intent. But again, I love talking to you guys because you guys talk me out of it. You guys prove to me every time, having conversation with you, when we hash it out and we just have rational, logical debates, we can follow this through the logical end and realize that government's never the answer. Never. We got to try to find things at the smallest level, at the lowest level. We got to find solutions. And by the way, that solution I was talking about, not the 3% solution, it's the 8% solution. So all we need is one person on a jury to say not guilty, to stop prosecutorial tyranny. That's it. Anyway, that's our show for today, gang. I wish we had another hour to do this, but unfortunately we're out of time. I want to shout out to Dan Sandini for joining us. Thank you so much, man. And shout out to the Mac Pack. Thanks so much for tuning in week after week, gang. You guys are the reason why we do this show. You're the tip of the spear. Don't forget to check us out every week. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. You can also listen to us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.